I know, I thought I saw where they might be in irrigation.
order, and we will, at this time, we don't have anybody here to give the invocation, so we'll do a moment of silence. So if you would all join me for a moment of silence. Thank you. And now, as Dale would say, for those willing and able, stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, we're going to let Dale do the presentations. It is
Oh, you're doing great.
The perfect timing.
Oh.
Perfect. You can now go to the podium and talk nicely.
Oh, okay, good. I was missing the Pledge of Allegiance, too. All right. I have no such good excuses. Thank you, everybody. Okay. We do have presentations. These are very cool presentations. We get to make these every year, and it's gotten to be a favorite of mine. We have two folks that had really stood out to us this year, that in the discussions with our department heads and the administration here with the city, and we made our first Volunteer of the Year recipient. You can catch my breath here. It's Keith Holloway. Keith, can you join me up here? Thank you, Keith. Now, Keith has been an excellent addition to the Planning and Zoning Commission. Has been serving there and serves as the chairman. Now, he served as a member before he was elected by his fellow commissioners to be chairman. And Keith has been doing a lot of hard work because we are, for the first time in 50 years, redoing our land development code. Kind of overdue. And so Keith and his commission, along with the community development staff, have been doing this line by line, page by page, which is an excruciating process. It's kind of the way this has to be done. And they've put in more time and energy, and have a lot more time and energy still to put in. And that will eventually come back to the council here, for ratification. Now, the Keith's provide leadership and efficiency in those meetings involving many key projects, including the comprehensive development plan, again, the land development code that I just mentioned, and many private development projects such as Maitland Market, which you'll come to know soon, hopefully, at the corner of Sleuth and Horatio, and the Gem Lake plan development, which furthers the vision of the city and downtown Maitland. Now, if you would, there we go. Let me read this, Keith. It's pretty cool. I like this. All right. So again, council members, all of our members of council, and this is presented on behalf of the council. I want to present you with the Volunteer of the Year. Thank you.
So the man told me he was going to send me a 3-page speech, but so he didn't come through, so I'll wing it myself.
So I said all three.
No, I just wanted to thank everybody for this great honor. I really appreciate it. Maitland is a special place. It's rich in both its people and its sort of wonders of the area. Myself, my wife, Andrew, and I, we really love this area and have connected with it. And we, want to do things sort of contribute to our community. So I'm looking for something to be a part of. And one of my business partners, Bob Yoey's past P&Z member, suggested I give P&Z a try. And so I submitted for it, and thankfully the council chose to allow me to serve, and I really enjoyed it. It's been immensely rewarding. So thanks to the council for giving me the opportunity to get up there and share, hopefully, a little bit about my knowledge in the process. So thanks for everybody, and thanks for this award. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
one this year. We had two folks that were deserving of this kind of recognition. Brian, you want to come up here with me? Brian Stewart. And Brian is a member of has been a member of our Physical Advisory Board, which will be gone as of tonight. Anyway, Brian is a member of the Police and Fire Pension Board. Okay, script. I should have read this first. Anyway, so he's attended more formal FFPTA certification training, 2 of those. Currently serves as the chairman of the board, highly regarded due to his experience in the financial field. And Brian joined the Board of Trustees in October of 2017. He was elected president of the Maitland Public Library Incorporated at the annual meeting of the membership on October 17, 2018. Now, as for his service with the library board, he's been instrumental in leading the financial committee to plan the annual budget, including implementing cost-saving measures as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. He was part of an ad hoc committee that crafted the library's mission statement, which was revised in 2019. He's currently leading the board, and laying out the new strategic plan. And of course, he and his family are heavy library users, and he is regularly on hand as a volunteer at important library functions. I was happy to get one of these. Of course, it took me 19 years.
Okay.
But you want to say a few words, Maitland?
Sure. I just simply want to say thank you to everyone involved in recommending my name. I know there's a lot of people in this town that would be equally deserving of this award, but I'm happy to accept it this year. The reason I do all the things I do for the city, other than enjoying the look of joy on his face whenever I show up into a room where the city councilman is my wife and my 4 children out in the hallway over there. I didn't want to burden you all with their ruckus, but my wife is the one you can blame for all this, because she saw me one Saturday afternoon about to enjoy a football game, and she decided I was entirely too comfortable on the couch doing that, and she thought that I ought to do something else with some of my free time. So here it is. I'm happy to be involved, and if I can be of service to anyone, please let me know. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody. So I have to let everybody know, if anybody's ever been out to the Central Florida Highland Games, Brian is the one in charge of all the clans out there. And I think, how many tents last time, Brian, you organized?
A lot, about 120.
120 clan tents out there, so he stays busy. Thanks, Brian. That's a lot of clans to keep busy. Okay. Thank you, Maria. Okay. Why don't we go ahead, we have no public hearings, so why don't we go ahead and adjourn the city council meeting and have Ms. Teresa join us, and we'll call the CRA meeting to order. Teresa.
I don't know, she wasn't sure she was going to be able to make it. She was out of town today, so I told her to let me know. I haven't heard anything.
Okay. Ms. Teresa, we're missing you. I think we have a quorum without her. Looking for a motion to approve the minutes of our last CRA meeting in November of 2020.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further comments? Hearing none, Ms. Maria?
Member Guthrie?
Aye.
Member Hall Harrison?
Aye.
Member Thomas?
Aye.
Member Wild?
Aye.
Mayor McDonald?
Aye. Okay. We have some new business. Ms. Sheridan, you want to share it with us?
Sure. So this is the first year that the CRA required a independent audit. It's always been audited as part of the city. This year they had to issue their own. We had to issue our own financial statements, and so this is the results of the audit with the independent auditor's report. It's an unmodified opinion, which sounds insignificant, but that's the best opinion you can get. So, and there were no findings.
Okay, any questions, anybody?
I move we adjourn.
Hold that thought. We don't have, do you have any questions, anybody from the public like to address this particular agenda item? Okay. Without any further questions or discussion, I guess a motion would be in order.
Would that be a motion to adjourn the CRA meeting?
Just to receive the audit report.
Oh, I would make a motion that we receive the audit report.
I'll second it. I love when Mike goes out on a limb. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Ms. Maria?
Member Hall Harrison.
Aye.
Member Thomas.
Aye.
Member Wild.
Aye.
Member Guthrie.
Aye.
Mayor McDonald.
Aye. All right, now we'll gracefully dismiss Ms. Garrett and the rest of us, and we'll adjourn the CRA meeting and reconvene the council meeting. Ms. City Manager, any old business you want to share?
Not for tonight.
Okay. Looks like this is our consent agenda moment. Anybody wish to remove any items from the consent agenda? Hearing none, anybody from the public like to address items 2 through 4? We'll wait to close the public hearing and bring it back to council, and a motion would definitely be in order.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Maria, if you would.
Councilmember Guthrie.
Aye.
Councilmember Hall Harrison.
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas.
Aye.
Councilmember Wild.
Aye.
Mayor McDonald.
Aye. Okay, moving right along. This is the legendary Maitland general public hearing where anyone can address any non-agenda items. This would be the time. Ms. Joanne.
Joanne Snodgrass, 1771 Chinook Trail, Maitland. I think it's time for me to speak positively about several things I have observed and experienced as a resident of Maitland. I'm not sure if I expressed my gratitude in the past. I believe it was Councilwoman Rethenoff who spearheaded and then stayed with it in getting the train trestle over 1792 painted with a new, fresh look. By fresh, I'm referring to the same tracks that had the long-suffering, rusty, and unsightly appearance since moving here as a young child in 1948. This statement of appreciation is long in coming. Thanks so much for that, Council and Dad. Next, the Downtown Maitland project. Though I was not 100% happy with the closeness of 1792 and its size, I do believe it has added vitality to our community and given us several wonderful establishments. I'm very pleased with the appearance of Independence Lane. Good job to the mayor and the council. On January 11th of this year, while getting a bagel at Einstein's, I became alarmingly dizzy and disoriented. A friend took me across the street to the Maitland Fire Department. There I had the basic procedures when you go there, the blood pressure, pulse, and then an AKG. At first, there were 2 firemen. Excuse me, this was very emotional. Then another. Repeated tests were done. There was a brief discussion, at which time I was advised to go to the hospital. I wasn't going to go. But with their professional tactfulness in explaining my condition, I did go, and I believe it was a life-saving experience. I wouldn't have made it without this. So thank you, Maitland Fire Rescue. I'm appreciative for everything. You're the best. Independence Square, the park. I wasn't accepting of their idea. I was wrong. It's fabulous. The layout, the amenities, the whole appearance. Top job. Thanks for giving us such a fine book. And now for the last item. Police Officer Blackwell. Recently I had an issue that gave me great alarm and fear. After calling the police on an emergency line and having a brief discussion, dispatch sent an officer to my house. Officer Blackwell arrived and I could barely talk to him. He arrived and was outstanding with his calming manner and professional advice. By the time he left, I was better informed and my fears alleviated. Kudos to him and to the whole department. They are our finest. I'm sure there are many more accomplishments through the years. I wish I had said thank you to various councils at that time. Now, these are the kudos. You will hear me speaking again later. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address the council on any non-agenda item? Hearing none, we'll go ahead and close the general public period. And Joanne, you were dead on. We are extraordinarily blessed here. And our first responders are second to none. We're very proud of that. It's something that the community owns, and it reflects our pride of ownership in our police and our fire department, our rescue folks. So that's part of who we are.
And I'm sorry I got so emotional.
Don't worry, I will later. Don't worry. Yeah, I'm not crying, I'm lying. So, thank you. All right, let's see, moving on. We have some appointments to do. Miss Maria? Thank you.
There are currently 5 vacancies, including the alternate member on the Board of Adjustments and Appeals. The terms of Mr. Graff, Mr. Shady, Ms. Matthew Sloan, Robert Smith expire on February 20, 2020. Ryan Scarlett, the alternate member's term expired on March 12. All of them are eligible for reappointment, but Mr. Sloan and Mr. Smith wish to be considered for reappointment at this time. The following applicants reflect this board as their first choice: Robert Smith, second choice Manuel Moore, Matthew Sloan. Council is requested to make 4 appointments effective the 3rd of February, each for a 3-year term.
Okay, so we've got Rob Smith and Matthew Sloan that are asking to be reappointed. Okay. Why don't we take those 2 first? Looking for a nomination for Rob Smith or
Nominate Rob Smith.
Second.
we have a motion and a second for Rob Smith. Chair is aching for a third. All right, Rob, you're good. Thank you. How about Matthew Sloan?
Nominate Matthew Sloan.
You can. It's okay.
I'll second his.
Third.
And we got a third, so we're good with that. Now, we've got, in order to be able to have a quorum, this is again this group hasn't met since 2009. I'm trying to say that too often. All that really means is we've had a dazzling set of decisions that haven't had to be appealed, right? That's the way I'm looking at it. Okay. Looking for nominations for the 3rd spot.
Can I ask one quick question?
You can ask 2.
Yeah. Is there any way we can stagger these so that they all don't come up? Is there any way we can, just so we're not doing it?
We had the same thing with the pension board where they seem to come.
I'm just trying to, I mean, I don't know that we can do it
I agree
right.
with
It's
you.
by charter, they have to go by 3-year terms and.
2 3-year terms, correct. And unfortunately, we haven't had them meet and applications on file, so your terms, you're more than welcome if you want to do the other 2 at different expiration dates.
I mean, it's almost like you'd rather wait to fill them.
I know.
Well, you almost see it sometimes, like people will move or they'll just go off the board or something, and then somebody else will come in, and then that's when you start getting that change of dates.
I mean, like, almost like, it almost, we'd be better off filling the 3rd seat or something and then.
When's the last time they met?
2009.
So it's 11 years ago.
I think.
I think we can wait a year.
Yeah, I'm thinking,
I think it's one of those envious spots in town.
I mean, Maria and Sharon, I mean, do you think, is that a bad? I'm just thinking if we do it, if we fill the one, and then we can stagger the other two, and then we won't have this continual problem of trying to have 5 at a time. That's just my.
Or can we make a motion, to do a 2-year term to start them?
Well, I know, and Cliff may want to weigh in on this, I know that's with the sustainability board, that's what I'm recommending, is you do a
Right.
1-year term and consider as if they're filling a vacancy, and then that would not count against them for term limits, and then they have 2 terms after that, but there's ways to do it, we've done before.
Sure, typically, these boards are set up for terms by charter or some version of the charter. And if they're not, you can create one. But again, by resolution, you can change whatever's in the charter because you ultimately have control for whether the length of terms or staggered terms or any of those things.
That might make more sense, then we at least have a quorum if there's a necessity for them to meet, but then we've staggered the terms by the nominations.
I mean, that's, I'm agreeing with you. The quorum, we could get there with 3.
Yeah.
Do we currently have to have 2, right?
We've got 2, so we can fill 1 slot. I mean, I'm just trying to think of where we don't have 5 at a time.
I agree.
So do you want to go ahead and fill the March slot, and then we'll come back to you with adjusted terms for the other 2 the next council?
Yeah, let's get a quorum, let's fill enough to get a quorum, and then let's see what we can do to adjust the staggered with these dates. So,
Chair would recognize the motion.
Who's the,
Mike, I'll let you handle it.
who's the nominee?
We have Mr. Nunez and Mr. Champlin left over.
yeah, I think you have said you have talked to Larry Snapper before, right? Have you, is that one you talked to?
Yes, dozens of times.
Okay.
That would not be my nomination.
Okay. So, what about Manuel Nunez?
Never met the man.
So I'm a little.
I have not spoken to him on the phone.
Does anyone know,
I haven't spoken to any of them.
anyone?
I've dropped the ball on this stuff, because you know I talk to all these people, but I have not spoken to Mr. Nunez.
I'm not a big fan of just throwing a dart, so I would suggest we table this one for a recommendation on the 3rd spot until the next.
Yeah. And remember, we can always reach out.
Yeah, I would agree with
I
that.
apologize for dropping the ball on not knowing more about these 2 specific, well, Mr. Nunez specific.
Okay. So my, I don't know if I need to, but I would say let's table this filling of the next slots.
The next 2 slots.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that a motion, do I have to second it?
Roll with it, Mike. Sharon, you good with that?
Yes. It will still leave you 1 short, so
Yes.
Correct.
if you know anyone who wants to serve on that,
Yeah, I bet we can do that.
Okay.
Very good, so, again, looking for a motion on tabling.
Do I need to?
Yes.
I make that motion to table it.
Is that the term we will table or continue? What is it?
Table.
Table, okay. So we have a motion to table,
Second.
filling the final 2 slots. Okay?
I think Mike made the motion.
Mike
Wild.
Mike Wild did.
Wild, and Thomas seconded it.
Lindsay did.
Lindsay
Good,
did.
Lindsay did, okay, thanks. Lindsay, you gotta yell at me. So we have a motion and a second, any further discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Maria?
Councilmember Paul Harrison.
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas.
Aye.
Councilmember Wild.
Aye.
Councilman Guthrie.
Aye.
Mayor McDonald.
Aye. Okay, let's see if it's the, we got some folks here that want to pay attention to the next board. Well, number 2, let's go ahead and go, yeah, stay in order for the moment, although I wouldn't mind, it's your pleasure, that we move. But if you're ready, Dan, let's go ahead and launch into decision item number 2.
All right, well, good evening, Mayor and member of council. The item tonight, the second item on the decision agenda is for a request to amend the Uptown Maitland Lot 2 Declaration of Restrictions and Agreement. So just a brief overview, the applicant is Gary Jensen. He's here in the audience tonight. The owner is Uptown Maitland LLC. Property is located just in the northeast intersection of George and Sibilia, a little over an acre in size in the Main Street future land use and the downtown Maitland zoning. The applicant is requesting to amend the declaration of restrictions to allow additional uses, amend the building height and parking ratio, as well as amend the architectural elevations that were approved in the original agreement. So the property, again, located right at the intersection of George and Sibilia. This is a map of the Main Street future land use. So it's within the Main Street future land use designation. A little look into it, standing at the intersection of Sibilia and George, looking directly into the property, looking northeast, going clockwise, you kind of see circulating at that intersection what's around it in the immediate vicinity. A little bit of history of the property. It was originally started back in 2003. There was a developer's agreement on lots 1 and 2 that was set to expire in 2013. So the council and the property owner entered into a declaration of restriction and agreement in 2012, which set the development standards and the parameters for Lot 2, which is the parcel in question tonight. There was an amendment done back in 2015 which added retail to Lot 1, thus adjusting it off of Lot 2 and changing the ranges of Lot 2. A second amendment to the declaration was proposed in 2018 to add a daycare use and to amend the building height. That request was tabled and the applicant decided not to proceed, so that went away. So tonight, in 2021, of course, a few months ago, we got a request for a second amendment to come back to the declaration that would add uses and amend the parking requirements, as well as amend the building heights and the architectural elevations. And I'll explain a little bit about that. This is the old table. So in 2012, the original declaration provided on Lot 2 3 multifamily units and a office retail development range between 11,000 and 58,000 plus or minus square feet, and it capped it at 23,000. That didn't change in the First Amendment. The Second Amendment, it did change in the First Amendment because they took some retail to the Lot 1, which reduced the range in Lot 2. This amendment, the items highlighted in red are the only changes really in this amendment, and that is to add a fitness center, gym use, with ancillary medical use such as a massage or something like that. That would be ancillary to the gym, and also a restaurant for dine-in or takeout as part of the permitted uses in addition to the office retail and the 3 multifamily units. So the parameters are the same in the First Amendment. The square footage would be between 9,700 and 56,000 square feet of office, retail, fitness center, gym, medical use, and restaurant, with a maximum of 21,732 square feet. The other big change is that the original declaration in the First Amendment had a requirement for the building on Lot 2 to be between 3 and 5 stories. The applicant tonight is requesting to amend that to anywhere between 1 and 5 stories. And nothing else has changed in the proposal other than the parking ratio is being proposed at 4.5 per 1,000 square feet for the fitness gym and restaurant uses. Everything else still stays the same with the multifamily and office retail. Parking ratios still stay the same. So those are the main changes, other than in addition to the elevation. So the applicant is proposing these elevations. The original declaration, First Amendment, had a very specific elevation proposed. So the applicant is wanting to change the elevation, and this is basically a view of what they're looking at. Tonight, council's role is to decide whether they want to enter into this Second Amendment agreement primarily for those uses that were outlined in red in addition to the elevation. It's not about the site plan, it's not about approval of the site itself, it's all about the elevations, the 1 to 5 stories, the addition of those restaurants, gym, and personal service, the ancillary uses. So should council approve the amendment to the declaration, then the next step the applicant would do would be submit a site plan review, which would go through DRC for a recommendation, and it would stop at P&Z. P&Z would have the final say. So council would not see the site because that's where it stops in the ordinance. So with that being said, the applicant is here tonight and has a brief presentation, and I will either stand here for questions or turn it over to them to.
Yeah, that'd be fine. You want to come over here?
This one?
Mr.
Sure.
Jensen, yeah.
I'm Gary Jensen. I would be the property owner and the owner of the building and partner in the gym. Basically, that's all we're really looking to do here is the gym. The restaurant would be if the gym failed over the next 15 or 20 years, that would probably be a good site for a restaurant as well. We're really looking for the gym use, and the medical inside the gym is more for a massage therapist or a physical therapist, not a medical doctor per se. This is my son Mark. He would be the gym owner, and he's just going to give you a brief synopsis of what the gym entails, the size and the clientele that we're trying to cater to.
Sure, thank you.
Thank
So our first vision before we even found this property was basically to really hone in on our passion in fitness. And I actually moved to Maitland. I bought my first house here in 2013, and I realized when I moved here I had to leave the city limits in order to continue my passion in fitness. So the first area that we looked at was the city of Maitland. Like I said, it's been a passion of mine, and with COVID-19 and everything, health and fitness, in my opinion, is super important currently. So basically the purpose of this gym is to provide a state-of-the-art workout facility and just an overall wellness facility for the citizens of Maitland. There's nothing like this currently. You have your 24-hour fitness, LA Fitness, YMCA type gyms nearby, or your small personal training gyms, but this is going to be completely different. Basically, our focus is going to be small group fitness, so groups of 4 to 6 people, sessions in 50 to 60 minutes in length, and then we're also going to have some other classes with some yoga and stretching and conditioning. What's going to really separate us is it's going to be a one-stop shop gym, so with very qualified personal trainers. It's going to be the newest of the new as far as equipment. We're going to have a big focus in recovery, having recovery-specific rooms with cold plunge tubs and saunas, and then also, like we mentioned, we are weighing the options of having an on-site physical therapist and also massage therapist. In addition to that, also focusing on the nutrition side of everything, and just from what to eat and how to work out, and after that, how also to recover. Our target client is really anyone. We'll have workouts that fit people who have been going to the gym their entire lives, people who have never walked into a gym before, high school athletes just trying to hone in on their skills for their specific sport, and also the elderly as well, who maybe want to either continue their fitness or learn more about it. As far as the building size, what we vision right now is about 14,000 square feet, with 6,000 of it being the workout gym floor, and then also having a turf area for, like I said, yoga and conditioning. We also plan to have an infinity pool possibly for swimming, and then also for like water recovery, walking and running. It's a little easier on the body. We plan to have no more than 50 people at one time inside the gym, and no more than 50 cars, so it's not going to be a ton of traffic as far as just in and out, hundreds of people throughout the day. And then as far as our hours, it's going to be, our plan right now is to open up at 5:30 in the morning of our first class, and our last class being between 8:30 and 9:30 at night. Our plan is to have it match well with the Maitland school that would be right across the street. That way, when they're focusing on drop-off and at their busiest hours, our classes have already started at that point. That's basically it.
So basically, we do have a little presentation, a video of our vision of the gym. This site is it's a very difficult site to build on. I'm a developer as well. The site slopes from a 0 elevation down to a -8. So it's very site-specific where the building needs to go on this site, which doesn't actually meet the Maitland Building Code as of right now, which is another department we're still going to have to go through, even if you all give us the approval tonight. We're decided that we want to put the building on the lakeside. That gives us the best level of elevation and gives us the most parking that we need. Anywhere else on that site, it just doesn't work for the building location, the building design. Calls for an L-shaped building instead of a rectangular, and the way the property slopes down, basically the building would have to slope down as well, so we wouldn't have a level floor. So let us this time to show the presentation, Dan, and you can get an idea of our vision of how it looks on the site and how it would look with cars coming up to it as well.
So this is the video that was provided by the applicants. Keep in mind that you're not approving the site plan, you're not approving the site layout.
Plan review.
This is Sedalia Avenue here, and then George going over here to the right. So this is right at the corner of that intersection. We've engaged some music if you want to get up and stretch. We also have reached out to the neighbors. We know a key component is having...
David, come on up to the microphone.
I'm sorry, David Miller with R. Miller Architecture. We've reached out to the neighbors also and presented the concept to them. And we've got a little map here that shows people in favor of the project surrounding the site. So it's the Montessori school, everyone that lives on that section of George Street in terms of the residential, and then people also going down, I think that's Minnehaha Court there.
Yeah, any more, Mr. Jensen?
No, that's really about it. The ones that I didn't get, they weren't home. I might have got more approvals. I've talked to other people that actually don't live in that area as well. And everybody that I've talked to seems for it. And I think it's a great site for this type of gym, or this type of fitness center, put it that way. It's nothing like an LA Fitness with numerous amounts of people walking in. Like my son said, at the max we would be hoping for is about 50 cars in the parking lot at one given hour.
Right. Anybody have any, well, better yet, before I go there, in spirit of full disclosure, I've had the opportunity to meet with Mr. Jensen and, David and Bob Miller. This was a couple months ago, wasn't it, David? Mm-hmm. And so we haven't talked about it since. I was, kind of blown away by how cool the video could be. And actually be able to see that level of detail on that particular site. But in the spirit of full disclosure, anybody else had any issues with any applicants or anybody else? If I can hear it now, this would be the time for questions for the
Any questions?
Or Mr. Miller.
What's the, how do you control the amount of people that are there? What's the methods that you
Well,
use to control?
basically how we came across this concept, we remember another gym that's exactly like this in Oviedo. And basically the way the gym is set up is that the way the memberships are sold, they're sold in where you get 8 personal training sessions with groups of 4 to 6, okay? So that's kind of where the whole premise of it is, and that's what we're looking for. We do sell individual memberships that I have that I can use the gym basically anytime. Today I drove by there at 1 o'clock today, and the only person that was there was the owner and his wife. So the way it works is it starts to start at 5:30. Hopefully you have 4 to 8 to 12 to 16. Hopefully 4 classes would be the goal, to have 4 classes going on at a time. So 4 times 6 is 24 people, which would be coming in. You know, if a couple stragglers came in, individual people like myself, that'd be 26, 27, 28, 29, 30 people. So that's really kind of the way we are going to control it.
Yeah, it's also a different gym. It's not really like your typical meathead gym where you're just kind of a bunch of people in there for hours. It's more of a boutique style gym, and you control it. You have to go on an app. You have to reserve your spot for that session. Like he said, there are some people that can go in and use the recovery and use the equipment, but it's a little different than your typical just open gym format.
It's also the membership fee is quite a bit higher than a normal gym as well.
Thank you. Questions, Lindsay?
So I'm a parent of the Montessori school. So I do that drops off and pick up, and we walk actually to school most days. And my concern is not necessarily for your application specifically, but it's for all of those residents in the apartments who have become used to using that piece of land as a dog park over the last year and a half. You know, I don't know that the apartments actually have a dog run, so not that that's your problem. It's the city's problem. We have to figure out a solution to that, but we now have a whole bunch of owners of dogs who live in those apartments who are going to have nowhere to put their dogs. So bringing that up because that's going to be an issue going forward we're going to have to deal with. In terms of the site, I commend you for finding something to do with that space. That's a really challenging piece of land to do anything with. My concerns are that water does tend to get an awful lot of garbage thrown over the edge, people walking by. Are you envisioning having any patio space or anything that is overlooking onto the water specifically? Because there are birds that nest there, and there are turtles, and there is a wildlife that has adapted themselves to live there.
The property line, from what I've seen by the survey, is about 20 to 25 feet from the water line at the level it is now. So we are planning to match a retaining wall that kind of matches the wall that's already there with a railing that matches that railing there as well. The back side of the gym, which we don't have the picture up now, but you saw how it kind of circled the circular part of the lake. There's about, from the back side of the building to the largest, to the biggest area is about 22 feet from there, and then it kind of tapers back on the side. So that would kind of be more of not an eating area or anything like that, but that would be kind of a yoga or stretching area as well, if the weather's right. We do propose to have, put up some picnic tables and things where we possibly have in the gym there is now. There is like a little smoothie bar that's inside there that we would offer to anybody that wants to stop in there and have a smoothie, and hopefully recruit them as a member if it's something they're interested in. We'd have the typical, the trash containers and things like that, and the gym is basically, the appearance is the number one way of this thing, and cleanliness is the way to go. So any trash that we would go in our containers and be disposed of properly. I can't say what's going to happen from anybody else, but anybody that is in our facility, there really wouldn't be any trash from our facility that would get in there.
We would also see that patio area out on the Sedalia side as where the umbrella tables would be, and where people would have a drink or a snack in that area. As part of the site planning, we are, and you see it in the animation, we are proposing some improvements down along the lakefront or pond front with kind of a Florida-friendly landscape, native plant materials, cypress, and some other improvements to that lake edge
The lakefront now is covered with nuisance plants right now. It's really a mess. It wouldn't, I wouldn't want it to look like that when we're done, so yeah, what David said is correct. As far as the school and the traffic, you know, we talked to the owners of the school there, and we decided that we would stagger ours from the 7:30 to 8:30 class, because she said her main time is from 7:30 to 8. So basically our classes are an hour long, so basically everybody would be in. They would be there before the school started to build up, and they would already be, school traffic would already be on by the time we're done. We're also going to put on the site plan that when you exit out of the south side, the south east side, is that you can only make a right turn coming out of there. You're not going to make that left turn and go behind the back of the school, kind of the way you drop off the kids down and go around it. So it's kind of, I can't control that, but it's something we would put a sign that said right turn only.
400 North also has a right turn only sign coming out onto Spelia Parkway, and everyone makes the left. So I don't necessarily encourage that as the only way to control traffic.
Yeah, it's really, there's no need for our people to come out and go that way. I don't know what the benefit, to go back that way. All we can really do is put a sign there, but that'd be the best we can do. I mean, I put some ballards up, but I think you guys, the school needs it as well.
All right, any more questions, Lindsay? Mike? Vance?
Yeah, it's 50 feet from the normal high water elevation for any kind of wall, right? Is it 50 feet? 25 feet.
It's 25 feet, yeah.
Okay.
But again, I mean, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but council, I caution you, you're not looking at the site plan, the layout. It's just, are you okay with the uses, or are you okay with the height and the elevation?
I was just asking a question because I couldn't remember.
Right,
This
right.
is a retention pond.
it's man-made.
It's
Right,
not
it is a
like- it's
retention
pond, so I don't see there being any restrictions.
Yeah, they can put the, well,
I think a patio would be umbrellas, coffees, whatever, croissants.
Smoothie, Mike.
I have a coffee. I go to the meathead gym, but
Keeping our goal tonight in mind.
Yeah.
You know,
This looks fine, you know, somebody found something. Last time we were here, we were putting a child care center there, you know,
Yeah.
the gym, so, I mean.
Listen, I'm gonna follow what Mike said, but I'd like to have lots, please. Oh, my bad.
You know, as far as Lindsay, you know, I thought one day they might end up giving up trying to put something there and we can get it for 50 cents on the dollar for a park, but I guess that's not gonna happen, so.
Well, that's right after we hit the community lotto. But, you know, Sharon and I and Maria were around in the 2003 days when this was originally done. The original consideration, obviously, at the time was 10,000 plus square feet on the ground floor and, you know, 96 condominiums. Now, it's been a long time since, that was my very first P&Z meeting, by the way. I'm almost sentimental about it. So I'd only learned at that point how to say yay. I didn't learn how to say nay yet. So it was an interesting break-in. So the world has evolved a bit at that spot since then. I don't think any of us have been overly knocked out with daycare opportunities and traffic clusters that every morning, every afternoon.
Ready to bless them and go forward and see what they can do.
Well, let's let the public speak first. Or do they need to speak? We have a public hearing here. Anybody from the public like to address this particular agenda item? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to council, and Mike, you are on.
The lady in the back.
Oh,
Two things, I want to make sure that they say to be a part.
Oh, you need to go here.
sorry. Apologize for missing you there.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members.
I'm Karen Schiffman. I live on West Sevilla Avenue, and so that is called Sevilla Parkway. What you're planning to do, not Sevilla, just to avoid confusion.
Ma'am, can we get your name and address for the record?
Sorry. Well, I'm Carolyn Schaefer, and I live on 341 West Sevilla Avenue, and I'm also known as the Mayor of Sevilla Avenue.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
that's it.
Madam
And I'm
Mayor, good to see
popular with
you.
my neighbors. So just make make sure you say Sevilla Parkway, because when you reach 7-Eleven, that's Sevilla Parkway. Also, is there a place called the Frog or something right there, Jim, too?
Yeah, there is a Frog that is taking the retail space in the apartments below the apartments. And the Frog is like about 1,000 square feet or less. It's a training center as well, totally different than what we're doing, but it's in there, yes.
And do you have an idea of what your membership would cost?
At our gym?
Yeah.
Probably right around $300 a month.
Wow. And those the Maitland residents?
Tell you what, Ms. Schaefer, if you would, please address the council with your questions
I'm
and
sorry.
comments.
I just want to say most of Maitland's residents are.
That's kind of
the top age
irrelevant,
and
really.
Yeah, but that's their problem, not mine. Thanks.
Thank you for directing us in that manner. Anyone else like to address the council on this specific agenda item? Now paying attention, hearing none, seeing none, we'll bring it back to council.
I got a couple questions for Dan.
Yeah, go ahead, yes.
And Dan, we're approving, I think with all of this, if you've reminded us, we're not approving a site plan, we're also not approving a user, we're approving a use. And so my concerns are, it sounds like everything that this group is doing sounds great, and they've got their act together. I'm thinking, always down the road of, you've now entitled a gym here, and what does that mean if there was a change of direction here? So I think,
For future restaurants.
so let me ask you, the gym is considered under the 21,732 max retail, right?
So, yes, yeah, the gym, the restaurant, all that would go under the max retail.
Right. The 21,000 square foot gym, if this were to change concepts and go to a straight gym, 21,000 square feet gym with 4.5 parking spaces is probably tough, I would think. As a
The gym is
tradition-
only going to be 14,000 square feet is what we're our proposal.
I'm not worried about it. Sounds like your gym is a totally different concept. I'm thinking
The next one.
10 years down, however many years down the line, change of fitness patterns, and it goes to something else, and now you're looking at, we've approved a gym there, and that gym could generate however many people at a time, totally different concept. So how do we deal with that on a code standpoint, that we don't sit here and because I think the idea sounds great, perfect for the situation of saying, hey, we've got to constrain the amount of cars and parking and all that. How do you address that from a land planning standpoint and a code standpoint, so that if there were to be a change of concept, we haven't just given an approval for LA Fitness Junior to come in and generate that many trips?
So that's part of their request tonight, is to allow that parking ratio. The parking ratio is overparked per the downtown Maitland code. But that's part of their request tonight. So if you approve it, if a gym came in and down the road it turned into a completely different use and there'd be a change of occupancy, we would relook at all of the parking ratios for that new occupancy type.
I don't think we could. I think my question is, can we? If a gym came in, any gym, aren't we given an approval to, if this passes, an approval for any gym, regardless of how nice the concept?
If this passes, you would be adding from the office retail and multifamily, you'd be adding a fitness center, gym, and restaurant, regardless of the tenant.
Okay, and how many, look.
Medical.
Yeah, well, the medical, I think we're okay with, because you've essentially said the medical's got to be ancillary to a gym. So I believe I think that concern, I don't think we have to worry that this turns into a 21,000 square foot medical complex. Because the approval says ancillary to the gym.
Yes.
So I think my concern is, how do you deal with this from a conversion to a different type of gym? Because I can't imagine, I've been to plenty of centers. Gyms are tough. They're very, very, like a conventional, we all know that LA Fitness, whatever, pre-pandemic, let's just go rewind the clock 2 years. I've worked with a lot of shopping centers where to deal with parking with a gym is tough, because it fluctuates and it's a very intense time period of before work, after work, and it eats up a lot of parking, but then otherwise the parking lot is empty. So it's hard to control it, because you don't want to have a sea of unused parking. But you also don't want people parking all over the place when there's that rush at a gym. So is there a way, do you have any suggestions where how we could address this so that this concept does not seem like a parking problem, but a gym in the conventional sense could be an issue down the road?
So if you approve it as proposed, that would be their locked-in parking ratio. If a different gym came in that had a much higher parking ratio, they wouldn't be able to get an additional one without coming back for a third.
But how would a gym, why would a gym have to come back? I think my point is a gym could come back as long as they're occupying 21,732 feet, we wouldn't have an approval right.
Unless they wanted additional parking. If they're,
But they would just say, look, I don't need it, but then you got a parking problem because they haven't provided for enough on-site parking. That's the problem. I mean, I don't care what they've asked for. I'm saying from a practical standpoint, you're gonna need.
Could you make it a conditional permitted use and therefore, it may change the process, or is it something you could address through site plan in terms of site plan approval? Or is it conditional?
well, it's not a permitted conditional use. That's a whole different process. That's a process that the daycare had to follow. A gym and fitness center restaurant would be permitted by right in the zoning district if it weren't for the declaration. They have to add it to the declaration in order to do it. So we can look at the parking when it comes to site plan review. Is your concern that it's overparked or underparked, or?
My concern is down the line. I think it sounds like this group's got a great vision and an idea of how to work with this constrained site, and it seems like they've really thought it through. I think what I don't want to have happen is you come in here, we approve it, and we approve it based on this group, and then if something changes, we don't get this group again. We get somebody else, and they don't have to follow the same business model or concept. So I don't know. This is a declaration clip, so I think we've got some flexibility potentially on how to be creative to address this, but.
Well, the answer is yes, you would in a developer agreement or something similar, but if I understand correctly, your parking, as it is looked it's based on square foot of usage, right? It's per X thousand. So, and that would apply whether it's the Maitland Fitness or it's Planet Fitness. For the sheep guys like me. So at the end of the day, even if it was another gym concept, if it's with the square footage that's available, they would be properly parked. The fact that they might have more patrons than you would like doesn't mean they're violating your code.
It would seem a gym that required more parking than would be allotted by this wouldn't buy that site because they couldn't park enough cars there. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
So they would, and I don't know where they would shun their parking off on somebody else. It just doesn't seem tenable that you would, buy a gym that didn't meet your parking requirements.
Can I ask a quick question? Dan, this is, the applicant is proposing this 4.5 parks per 1,000, correct? Now that is compliant with the pre-downtown Maitland district parking requirements, or complying with the post-downtown Maitland district parking requirements?
It's overparked from the post downtown Maitland. I'd have to look back at the code to see what the ratio was.
What standard we're applying to that?
Yeah, it was a standard that was requested by the applicant.
Time of being in Never Land sometimes with an LDC. Okay, and in the time that I had a chance to see this video before, that was one of the things that I pointed out to these folks is, one day, Mr. Jensen this is not y'all's business one day, and got a great building. How do we repurpose it? Begin to think more broadly, because that building's 40, 50 years. And what's the best way to realistically play with that site to benefit a couple of generations of Maitland folks? I don't know necessarily what that is, but I'm pleased as I can be that it's not a daycare facility.
So wouldn't it be repurposed as a restaurant? according
Yeah,
to
and that I think was probably, I'm sure, part of the thought process.
So if you're worried about traffic flow and this whole facility is repurposed as a restaurant where you could go to your.
Would the parking fit for that? That's.
Well, actually drive through, or what's the new word for drive through?
I have more confidence in you folks than that.
So, anyway, but I mean, we can throw all kinds of things.
Yeah. But their application is specifically for this.
But if they repurpose this to a 21,000 square foot takeout restaurant, would it come back to us, or can they do that based on this?
If they stay within the parameters, all they're asking is to add what's existing, the multifamily office and retail, up to 21,732 square feet of retail. They're looking to add fitness center, gym, and restaurant use. So as long as they play within those parameters, they
So
would
they
not be
could
coming
make a
back.
21,000 square foot restaurant.
Correct, and they would not have to come back.
That would sort of, everything we've done to adjust traffic flow to meet the neighbors would sort of go out the window, because now there'd be an entirely different business with entirely different traffic flows.
That was my.
Yeah.
And there's plenty of off-street parking too, right? And there's right there across from Gray's, and then the
I think the traffic
apartments.
flow is the issue that they don't want. I don't know who would be driving to get their drive-through meal at 3 o'clock, or maybe in the morning at 8 o'clock, but.
Yeah, it never happens across the street though. So,
That's just.
yeah, I understand. Anybody else have any questions? Dan or the applicant?
I think Mr. Miller I think he wanted to say something. I don't know if he.
Yeah, go ahead, Dave.
I just wondered if it would be helpful if we limited the gym or the restaurant to the 14,000 square feet that we're currently proposing. That way someone can't come back and take it up to 21,700 square feet. And to give you an idea of that size, that's about as big as Hillstone Restaurant is down in Winter Park.
And I'm happy to give them you don't have to give it to the number. I mean, give yourself a few hundred or 1,000 extra feet on that. But I mean, I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I also, what I was thinking about, Cliff, and I don't know if this is possible, from the standpoint of saying that no problem with a 5-year window, and then after 5 years, if there was a change of use, they would have to come back through no problem. Give yourselves enough time to get through this initial, your approvals, get all that done. But if there was a change of use, you'd have to come back to see if that change of use still works with the parameters of the declaration.
Well, if there's a change of use, then between the two that they've already presented, which is gym or restaurant, they have to come back anyway, but that's all you're giving them. If you're meaning a change of use,
I think you're giving them everything. I think you're giving them everything that's currently, the only thing you're doing is, we're just adding your stuff, right?
To those particular declarations, those downtown Maitland.
I don't want to, I'm sure we got, people want to talk about the other things on this agenda, but I think that we might, you hit on it, we've all kind of hit on just what happens when this thing changes over, whether that's 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. We all
we
know
hope
that.
that's the case.
And as Lindsay said, I mean, that's a tough, the traffic in there is tough. And so we love this idea, or this idea sounds great because it helps with the traffic.
Well, as a developer, like I said, that site right now, you could build a 21,000 square foot building in there, retail or whatever, with parking. We're only going to build a 14,000. As a developer to come in, the one gentleman there, Mike, hit the nail on the head. You've got a 14,000 square foot building. You've only got a limited number of parking spots. Why would you even plan on putting a business back in there if you were going to add another 8,000 square feet onto the top of it with no more parking? That just, I think we're looking so far ahead that doesn't really even make any, doesn't matter. You're talking about a big expense already to do that, and then you're talking about expenses that you can't do the parking, because the parking is already there. If you were gonna take that site and totally redo it, then you maybe have to rip up all the parking, put underground parking in there or something like that, you know, if it was gonna expand. But you've got a big expense to expand, not only the purchase price for the land and the building, now you're gonna tear the building apart and add another 8,000 square feet to it, or 6,000 square feet to it, with no parking.
So what are you good with, instead of the 21,732, what's the max retail that you're okay with?
The max size of the gym right now is 14,000 square feet. It might go up a little bit here or there. I'm not sure. We haven't done the final design
So
yet.
15,000.
Well, let's say 16,000 square feet.
16,000?
You good with that, Mr. Jensen?
I'm fine with that, yes.
Okay. All right, any other questions, comments from folks up here? All right, well, the chair would certainly entertain a motion.
I'm not quite sure to
So,
verbalize what Mike negotiated there.
I'll
You talking about 15, 1.5?
I think you asked for 16.
16.
So
16?
So I'll make a motion to approve the proposed second amendment to Uptown Maitland 2 Declaration of Restrictions Agreement with the change on the max retail to 16,000 square feet.
Second.
Does that cover it, Dan?
Boy, you understood it that time.
Yeah, it definitely covers it. You want to max the retail or just max a gym use only?
No, I think what we're thinking about is the conversion side of it.
Okay.
So, yeah. And as long as that, I'm not trying to create any problems here, I'm just trying to be a little bit more.
Presenting long-term.
Yeah.
So retail and restaurant uses are maxed at 16,000?
Correct.
Okay.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Ms. Maria, if you would.
Councilmember Thomas,
Aye.
Councilmember Loyal,
Aye.
Councilmember Guthrie,
Aye.
Councilmember Hall Harrison,
Aye.
Mayor McDonald.
Aye. Okay.
Good luck.
Thank you, guys. Look forward to do great. With DRC too. And P&Z. Good luck with all that. Okay, our next decision item.
Want to flip 3 or 4 down?
Are we on 3? Yeah. That's where I thought we were headed. Right. So Ms. Maria, if you will read the title.
A resolution of the City of Maitland, Florida, establishing a Sustainability Advisory Board, establishing bylaws and constitution for the Sustainability Advisory Board, and providing for conflict, severability, and effective date.
Okay, Ms. Sharon.
So as you are aware, in September of 2019, Resolution 21-2019 was adopted to create an ad hoc sustainability committee to assist in the development and implementation of a citywide sustainability action plan and make recommendations to the City Council. And as it related to the Resolution 14-2019 climate change resolution. The ad hoc committee was created with a 24-month sunset provision. And at the January 13th meeting, the committee discussed the possibility of converting the ad hoc committee to a permanent advisory board similar to lakes and parks advisory boards. Essentially because the committee believes sustainability initiatives to be long-term in nature, whereas an ad hoc committee typically ends. They complete a task, they end, they go away. They're seeing this as a much longer-term implementation than 24 months. So this is a resolution that was drafted that they approved at their February 10th, 2021 meeting with the exhibits that are bylaws, constitution, includes a provision to sunset the ad hoc sustainability committee when the advisory board is created. And then, as we talked about earlier, we would stagger the term limits and appoint the committee to be the initial advisory board members with staggered terms, and treat these staggered terms like they were filling a vacancy, so that they would not, term limits would not be impacted because they would be serving in no more than 2 years. And so that is what I have attached and drafted, and I know the committee chairperson is here and ask questions of me, and I know he probably would like to get up under the public period or any questions from us for him.
Anybody have any questions of manager or the esteemed chairman?
Well, we got rid of one board, so we can just switch over to another one, and we'll keep our yin-yang going here.
Well, I wish that were the case. Mark, anything you want to address? Yeah, you come over here.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, Mark Walsh, 430 North Lake Sedalia Drive, and your current chair of your ad hoc sustainability committee. And the one little kind of funny thing is that the ad hoc committee implies that it's a one and done. We come in and we make recommendations and we evaporate. And just by the nature of sustainability, it's perpetual. So it's something that we hope will be an ongoing advisory board to evaluate roughly a dozen topics that we have as focus items, action items, primarily related to energy and sustainable growth, that sort of thing. And so far, I'm very impressed with the group that you've got and assembled. Karen has come up with a very creative way of staggering the appointments to avoid the situation we had earlier. So I'm very much in favor of this. I think it's a great credit to the city to be thinking about this type of topic, of whether it's energy or recycling or water or lakes. Sustainability is going to be something that we look at in perpetuity. So I'm very much in support of it and look forward to seeing it as a permanent board, at least as permanent as boards, the advisory boards can be. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Anybody have any questions, Mark? I do, Mark. Where would y'all stop and Lakes Advisory Board start?
Say that again?
Where would a permanent sustainability board stop and a Lakes Advisory Board begin?
I think they don't separate. I think they overlap.
Oh.
I think there's a considerable overlap both in parks, in transportation, in lakes.
Even planning and zoning?
And planning and zoning. So there's a tremendous overlap in this board. I think that probably joint meetings of the sustainability board with its other boards would be something that they'd be considering going forward.
All right, thank you, Mark. Anybody else have any questions? Thank you. Sharon, any more feedback?
I your question, all the leading in nature, did get to the point of, where I do think there is some overlap here, and I do think it's going to be interesting because I think that the end goal from a sustainability standpoint, you want to see that sustainability, you want to see it overlap, and you want to see it in the planning and zoning elements. You want to see charging stations. You want to see more energy efficient buildings done, whatever, and that goes into other facets. So it's interesting. I don't know how that plays because I think we've struggled, and actually Dan Mathis and I had a conversation about this before about when planning and zoning would, and actually Vance was actually chair of Lake Advisory when I think we came and wanted more interaction with planning and zoning. And we struggled at the time with how to make that work between advisory boards and how do you refer things from one board to another, and that had its challenges. So I do think there is some complications here to work through, and I don't know if we're there yet or not. I don't know. I'm all for and I think all of us here are for the sustainability aspect and having that looked at. And I just don't know how that works in the relationship with the board. I see you, John.
I would hope that in the best format for that, they sort of serve as a bridge between the different boards, so that all the boards are thinking in that direction, like whatever, traffic. So, I think there's, hopefully there's more to be gained here than the possibility of things going AWOL if we have good people. This is kind of where the world's headed. Everything is sustainability. Every corporation is sustainability. Amazon, I mean everybody. That's when you do your marketing pitch now in corporate America, the first thing which states sustainability, because that's kind of what people want and where the world's going. So I think this kind of sends a good message about the city that we have something like this.
What message does it send, Mike?
Well, I like I said, this is it. This is the world. This is sustainability is where things are now. It's we're not in the 1960s anymore, and so I would support this. I think it's if things go horribly wrong, which I don't see that happening, but if Mark's a reasonable guy, Karen's a very smart lady, I think there is more to be gained than the fear of the downside. So I would support this.
So I'm not worried about anything going horribly wrong. I agree with you. These are good people, and what I'm trying to figure out is what the mission is going to be. Just because I'm trying to understand, because I think you're right. Like, this is sustainability is going to reach into all these fields, and it's going to be the future that everyone's talking about. How does that play, though?
I'm not sure, Mike, that we can sit here and kind of chart out where everything's going to go. I think sometimes you got to let your children loose and hope they figure it out. If we think of every contingency and try to control stuff, I mean, we try to bring on good people and hope they can figure it out and move forward. And I guess if they can, at that point, we would have to intervene. But
I would tell you, actually, I agree but disagree that if you don't give a board a mission, if you don't give them parameters to operate in, I think you're actually setting them up for failure. So that's where I would disagree with you. I think the idea is sound, and I think I don't think anyone's trying to debate sustainability. I think what I'm trying to get at is how does this play in the function? And are we just saying, go give us any sustainable ideas, and then again that would then relate to then how does that overlap into the other advisory boards?
So we do have an action plan, and it goes through each of you guys adopted it. And so we did the resolution, then we did a 2-year action plan that will be coming up, and we need to report back to you. And so they can't just throw anything on that action plan. They certainly can explore, just like Lakes can or P&Z. Hey, we heard about this. Would that work for the city? And I think that's part of what they bring is some of those ideas. There's been ideas in the past, and the committee has said, like, hey, that looks like maybe something that could be interesting to the Lakes Board. Can you give it to the Public Works Director, see if she thinks that's something. So they've done that. The action plan is pretty specific in terms of what the plan is for 2 years. Obviously, at the end of 2 years, we're going to adjust it, see where we've made progress, where we can make more. But I think, like, we did go over the LDC sustainability stuff in pretty good detail and work through it, and we'll give that to the Community Development Director, and these would be suggestions from that board, that it's not, those can go to you, or those can go to staff to look at, hey, you might want to consider these. And I think they came up with some good suggestions. Some suggestions may not work, because when the planning board sees them, they go, oh, that's just not going to fly. But I mean, I do think planning, zoning, and lakes, although they do their lake quality thing, they might not necessarily be involved in low impact development ideas that planning and zoning would. So they're all overlapping, whether it's planning and zoning or parks, or in fact, Councilman Guthrie and I were talking about when each board used to have a liaison that would go to a different board, like the Lakes person would go to the Parks Board or the Park, and they just report back, hey, this is what we're working on, and I don't think anybody was ever stepping on anybody's toes.
Yeah, so we kicked that around. This is now 4 or 5 years ago. Yeah. Whenever it was that you and I overlapped as chairs of each of those boards, but and it was challenged. When I met, and I was actually talking to Dan. This was, I think, pre-Dan, and it was we were trying to figure out how to make that communication work, and there was perception from what I perceived was that was challenging. That trying to get liaisons on all these boards to go to every other board, it just, and then we were saying, okay, we can't do that, so let's make it staff level liaisoning between the different boards, and then that presented some challenges for what I remember back then. So, look, I want to be supportive of the sustainability idea. I also think that the COVID issues probably delayed some of the progress in that 24 months. I'm sure that we haven't had as much to kind of look at, but I would recommend that we have, and it doesn't have to be done tonight, but that we start to look at how we can give more missions to this committee and board.
With specificity.
With a little bit more direction, so that it's not just, and that's just, look, I'm not saying I know about this, I'm sure that this idea is right. I'm just thinking that if you don't give direction, it just may not ever come to something that's meaningful. I think that there's something that should be done on a mission directive statement. That, and maybe we can look at it every 2 years. Maybe this is something that the missions will change as technology and these things advance. But I do think that there's a committee without this wide of a net is potentially too broad, that it just maybe not going to set itself up for success. That's just my.
I wanted to comment. I think that we were given a pretty good marching order at the original resolution.
Is there something else that you specifically want to add? Because the public period's been, we haven't had that yet, have we?
All right, thank you.
Is there something else that you'd like to add, Mark?
No, it's just that I was going to answer a question. If there was a question I can answer.
Oh, could you? Okay, go ahead. Why don't you answer Mike's question? I apologize.
The question was, I don't know if you were on the council when the resolution was passed, but it actually it had 13 specific marching order items in the resolution that we were operating under. I just want to see if you remember that.
I do, yeah. I'm not sure how that changes that.
I understand. Any other questions or comments of Sharon? You know, one of mine, you know, I have a late question. Do I want to call Paul Brennan, or do I want to call Mark? Or do I want to call Ryan? You know, here in the city. And you know, I'm such a junkie. I attend all these meetings. And so, I enjoy that. I'm just wondering how difficult it is, like you are on point. It's difficult to stay in your lane when you think sometimes your lane is the whole city. I mean, to watch some of the sustainability board go through, am I accurately reporting it, Sharon? There were a couple of 100 comments that were a part of the process with P&Z through the existing land development code.
I don't remember the exact number. I think it was around 100.
Yeah, there were lots of them. And,
they were questions and comments.
yeah, and so again, that's primarily, you know, again, I share some of your concerns like that. We've got easily turf wars that can even actually happen. And we get ourselves kind of caught in the middle up here. So, common sense, Mike, and both of you, Mike's all of you know that I'm fact that we did electric lawnmowers a couple of meetings back. Made sense. It's because we had a sustainability resolution. Maybe it raised the question. But now the question can't be unraised, can it? Can we just do things that make sense? Those are my thoughts. I'm not anxious to set up a new board for the sake of accommodating the aspirational views of the city, of people in the city.
Well, I disagree with you on that.
Do you? Tell me about it.
I think we need to hear the aspirational views of our residents.
Really?
Yeah.
We elect, okay, I hear you, Mike.
I mean, we're not the font of all wisdom. I mean, they made 100 suggestions or whatever to P&Z. Were any of them any good? I mean,
No, not
P&Z. So, I mean, if they're bad suggestions, I'm sure P&Z will toss them, and if they're good, they'll adopt them, and maybe they'll come up with things P&Z hadn't thought of.
So I'm okay with the concept of the board, actually, and disagree that. I think there is room, and I think there's a benefit to a board like this. My concern is how do you cause the interplay, and what's the process going to be, and is there a mission, and is there goals, and how does that all work? Because I do think I want to set it up for success, actually, and I think that to say go coordinate with all the other boards, I just don't think that's doing it for you personally. I think there's got to be a better way to set this, and again, we can work on this as we go and figure out how to get a better, because what is the thought, Sharon, that this board would recommend to lakes on certain things, or would they make a recommendation and come to city council, and then city council would then direct lakes to follow that? What's the process?
Right, so the advisory board recommendations come to you all in terms of recommending some sort of change, but that's not really, I mean, we have the action plan, and that's their plan, and in there it does have water quality stuff that we're already doing. So if you were going to add something in there, it had to go through you. You guys adopted that action plan, so they can't unilaterally change it. So
I think that then
They have to be unilaterally changing anything. Are they?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Well, there's
Talking about
no
the action
authority
plan.
for any sustainability board or any other advisory board
Right,
to unilaterally change anything.
Right, well, that's what I was clarifying. They wouldn't be saying, hey, ladies, go change your program. It would come to you, but I'm sure it would be in conference with the Lakes Board to make sure that that's something they too would agree with. I mean, they're not coming there to cram something, you know what I mean? Like I don't know, it's a little more collaborative to me.
I remember when I was on Lakes, we've always reported if we had something, you brought it back to city council, but if I wanted to talk, I couldn't talk as Lakes Advisory Board, but I could go to a meeting and discuss things.
Yeah.
But I would not say, I'm coming to you as a representative of the Lakes Advisory Board because.
Reflecting the beliefs of the Lakes Advisory Board.
Right, exactly. So I think, a lot of things have come. I remember when I was on Lakes, we brought, 9 things to city council, and city council probably denied 7 of them. But, and same with P&Z, but that's just how it is. I mean, that's just what goes on. I mean, probably the same thing today. If we like an idea, we'll take it and we'll send it in the direction it needs to go. I mean, how many times we sat here, and just the other couple weeks ago, and I was like, I'd like to send this back to planning and zoning.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think it should go in that direction where everything needs to be directed to city council, and then we'll decide if it goes any further than that.
I think some level staff can sort of do that role as well, but not every little thing, but I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
so that could mean, like, I think you were on it maybe for a little bit when we were dealing with this, which was that, Vance, you wanted to see it earlier, because you would say, hey, by the time you get it to planning and zoning, Lakes would have already wanted their input.
Yeah.
And you were saying, hey, it didn't come to us soon enough, and it was that interplay between the boards that was tough. And Mark, I mean, if you're on this committee, you're gonna say, hey, I wish I had seen this project sooner, because I would have had a sustainability comment to it. So how does that work?
In meshing those.
And so I think it's more on
And
the
the
line-
timing thing, not to hold back, also who's ever doing the
And
project. So
It's
that
really
it's all
policy,
down.
I mean, I think, Sharon, my thinking is that this is more of a really like policy
Yes. Yes.
board,
Mhm.
not a project, which is why that
Yes.
interplay with the boards, and that's why I think we need to move that conversation away from saying we're gonna interact a lot with the other boards and saying you're gonna come up with policy and directives and information that then comes to city council that then gets discussed, approved, and not focus on that interplay between the other boards. That's just my.
On item number 4 in the bylaws, states the city council, I mean, the committee, the city council, or the city manager designee may place items on the committee agenda for discussion, so it would be advisory board for discussion. Resulting actions and their implementation must be approved by the city council. So it comes to you. They're not going to another board saying implement this. And that's and review and provide input on information to be distributed to the public. It's very similar to Lakes Board. Recommend strategies for increasing energy efficiency, conserving water, reducing waste, protecting sensitive natural areas, reducing greenhouse. I mean, they got it pretty specific. And then, of course, participate in the implementation of the citywide sustainability action plan. So those are the 4 things it spells out in the bylaws, and I think it clarifies that their path for any implementation of actions they recommend is through the city council.
Mike, I totally am with you on policy and that they don't review individual projects, because we don't need to send the developers through the gauntlet. and have each board flog them. So, I think they make policy suggestions and that's it. They don't rule on the project. They'll go in next door.
Because I've heard a lot in the discussion of this board. I've heard a lot about comment on the land development code. I think that, like I said, I think it's better to have a more defined scope. But that's just.
So you want to do the bigger picture than the micro picture to say, hey, listen, maybe in our town we do energy efficient this or that over this project needs to do.
Yeah, and I think thinking outside the box. I was talking to Dan Davis, saying we want to promote, instead of looking at a project and saying the project should have this, it's saying the city should focus on this and encourage this and have, or decide that Maitland should be a pilot city for some sort of alternative project. Things like that, I think, are great. And I think that's what it should be, and not this, specific project or really that.
Right, like they can work on city projects. Also, say we do the park over there at Maitland or Fort Maitland. I mean, they could have some say into that, but not Bob Jones who comes in here, he wants to turn his project and doesn't want to wait
I think it's more. I think it's less about one specific site, and it's more about any specific site. It's more about policy objectives and missions.
That's what I was thinking, common sense, some cost-benefit analysis, some things that are maybe beyond, particularly from a planning and zoning and land development code standpoint.
And I hear you, but I do think that there's a room. I think there's room for that with the board, and I don't. Maybe we can get behind. I think there is a role for the board. I just want to make sure that.
Sharon, when does this ad hoc committee sunset?
24 months from their creation, so I believe it's September of 21.
So, I mean, we still got some time. Is this something we wanted to maybe table for the night and have some thought on it? And
You can change their bylaws and remove them at
There's
any
certainly
time.
no urgency.
Yeah, I'm just saying, you can.
The self-aggrandizement of 5 committee members.
I think that's a little harsh,
I don't, so I use.
I mean, why are you taking shots at them? They're
I'm at every
volunteering.
meeting, Mike.
I mean, they're volunteering their time, they're trying to improve the city, you know, and you just take shots at them. I just don't-
So Sharon, what you're saying is, if you approve this, the bylaws can be looked at.
I'm good either way, whatever.
Look,
There's no urgency, I mean, it was a recommendation of the board. They felt like, I mean, that the plan is gonna be long-term. There's no question, the amount that you can accomplish in 2 years in sustainability is some electric lawnmowers and, you know, some other stuff, but there's a lot more in-depth analysis to be done, as to how we can look at our total carbon footprint. And we're doing that, there's strategies, but it won't be done in September. But we're only in February, they were just looking ahead.
Yeah, I would suggest we have them send it back to them and let them chat it up about, you know, what direction the council wants it to go in, and then maybe we look at, you know, their bylaws and make a decision. We know we got some room,
So we want to table this?
Well, I'll make a resolution to support the creation of the Sustainability Advisory Board. I'll make a motion.
All right, looking for a second. Hearing none, looking for another motion.
I make a motion that we, what I just said, we send it back to.
Can you be more specific about what you want me to do when I send it back?
Yes.
Because I'm a little lost.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think the problem lies in what the charter and the bylaws are, is that correct? Is that what the question is we're worried about, what?
The bylaws spell out what their roles and duties are.
Here's what I think.
I mean, I don't know if they're coming in thinking that they're gonna be part of having control of seeing everything come through the city, or if, you know, they're good with just having the general,
No development review would be coming to them, they're not part of that process.
and they understand that?
Yeah, it's set by code. I mean, they're just not in that process, neither is lakes and neither is parks. I think we cleared that up a long time ago. So that, they're looking at the land development code to say like, oh, our sustainable practices in here, because they're not going to see any of these projects. They want to make sure, you know, that as development comes forward, some of these forward-thinking, sustainable practices are thought about. Doesn't mean anybody's going to adopt them, doesn't mean anyone's going to put them forward, but, you know, planning and zoning, it was just to provide some additional information about what's out there. It was not to review any projects. Projects will not, and it doesn't say that in their bylaws. It says,
So here's where I think there's a disconnect, and I think I've heard, when I read the bylaws, and I read what Sharon has said is here, I think it is a more advisory, come to council with ideas. But then I've heard speak of it in different ways, like where we've talked about liaisons and different things, and that's why I was trying to seek from the clarity of what is it that's really going to happen. So I think the idea that the bylaws, I think Sharon, you're saying what would we change, and I think the answer is from the bylaw standpoint, probably not much unless you wanted to more narrow the scope or say something of setting the agendas or having something where the mission on a however many yearly basis, because I think you were saying, Mark, that there was clear paths forward initially, and is there a need for that kind of clear direction or not? Or is it more come up with a bunch of ideas and come to city council? But I think what I wanted to make sure was that this was not an idea that this was going to be what we've all just talked about as concerns. And so I've heard talk of it. I've heard talk of it that goes beyond the scope of what's on paper. That was my.
Here, if I'm understanding, the staff prepared the resolution, the bylaws.
they are the standard bylaws for every other board with the things that were in the committee's bylaws dropped in. So it just took the board, the committee that was already created, and dropped it into the same bylaws that every other board, TAB, PRAB, LAB has.
Does he have any thoughts?
Sharon, who's the staff member who's going to oversee them?
Well, right now it's me.
Okay. So I think you understand and have clear direction on how this should go. I don't honestly see the controversy in allowing this board to be created. I've read the bylaws. I think that they give sufficient latitude for the board to advise on issues of sustainability and to be creative in solutions and to make suggestions to council. But I don't see anything in there that is telling this board to go and sit in on lakes meetings or parks meetings or P&Z meetings and to start advising them on what they should be doing. There's nothing in here that creates liaisons to those boards that makes any sort of oversight board. I know these are all words that are coming up, but if I read it, I don't see anything controversial here that I think is not totally obvious and completely within the wheelhouse of what we should be creating in order to actually implement sustainability plans going forward. Wouldn't it be fantastic if this new board was able to come up with a program that they've heard about or researched and found somewhere across the country where there's a grant that we could, get solar panels put on the roof of the building or something. I don't know. I mean, but if we don't let them get creative, and we don't let them go and do what's within the mission of what they can do, just what we're talking about here, I don't think that has anything to do with the capability of the people on this board to be able to go out and come up with their own solutions. And I certainly also don't think it licenses them to think that they have any ability to go out and tell other boards what to do, because I don't think that they want to do that.
I don't think the other boards make their own decision too.
Yeah. There has been conversation, we started this sort of with that direction, so I just think, I'm okay, I think the board there's a need for the ideas and the creativity, I'm all for that. I just think that
if Sharon's in charge of it, I'm not worried about what's going to,
I actually am worried about it because I think Sharon's got enough to do.
Well, she does,
Yeah.
but
that I do think is a challenge for Sharon. I do think that this is putting a burden on her that's tough. But
Well, initially, our economic development strategic initiatives guy was to take this on, and he didn't stay long enough to take it on. So Sharon has been, the go-to person for that. And changing the topic very slightly, if I recall, Sharon, was there some proposal or suggestion from the Sustainability Ad Hoc Committee about having a sustainability officer or an employee that we would need to add?
So nothing like that's come from them as a recommendation.
No.
It would, so they haven't actually made a recommendation for that. I'm sure they would if asked, but that's not been brought before them for a recommendation.
Okay.
That's typically in my purview, is to class and comp and staffing table.
I understand. I was seeing in here earlier that the financial impact was none.
By changing it from an ad hoc committee to this one, it's still the same people serving the committee meeting once a month, so.
here's what, I will second Mike's motion with Mike Thomas made a motion.
Well, because, Lindsay made a motion.
I don't think so.
No, she didn't make the motion. I made one and nobody seconded it until now.
I seconded Mike's motion and with the understanding, and again, if you think, Sharon, that the bylaws adequately cover the fact that these are policy directives that go to the council and are not advisory opinions to the different boards, and if you think that that's adequately covered, then I'm good with that. If you think something should be added to what we've seen to clarify that, then I'm open for that addition, but if you think it's been adequately covered, then I second Mike's motion.
I think it's adequately covered.
Do I have to accept that as a friendly amendment, or are we good?
That would be friendly.
I wholeheartedly agree with what Mike said.
All right, we have any If any more questions or comments regarding the motion? Hearing none, Ms. Parade.
Councilmember Miles,
Aye.
Councilmember Guthrie,
Aye.
Councilmember Paul Harrison,
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas,
Aye.
Mayor McDonald.
Nay. Okay, moving forward. Where am I? Oh, here we go. I'm missing mine. Sorry, user error up here. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, go ahead.
A resolution of the City of Maitland, Florida, implementing the Maitland Area Transportation Study and the Downtown Maitland Master Plan as the blueprint for the transportation improvement in downtown Maitland and providing for an effective date.
Yes, this is an item that I had need to introduce, a resolution that I put together. There are a couple of minor scrivener's errors that need to be clarified. That of no particular, maybe Marion is actually away and not a drive. But again, we've found ourselves, and I think you all have all received a copy of a resolution that was passed in August of 2004. That was a large-scale study done by, the Department of Transportation, Orange County, Seminole County, and the City of Maitland. It has been commonly referred to since as the Maitland Area Transportation Study. And since that time, if you all had an opportunity to see that, there were several projects that were approved by our city council in those days to serve as the model for our downtown Maitland transportation model. And at this point, most of those projects have been completed. And not the least of which was, of course, our down ramp from Maitland Boulevard to 1792. The retiming of lights at Maitland Avenue, Maitland Boulevard, which is now obviously obsolete. And the narrowing, if you will, because keep in mind, in those days, we were operating under with a predicate, and Cliff Tate's here to be able to, was part of the design team, as part of that study. That's our, you still the TAB chairman, Cliff?
I'm not a chair, I'm on the TAB.
Okay. And so Cliff was intimately involved with the process. And it's been in place. It includes a variety of things. The narrowing of Horatio, as you know. The double lefts going eastbound on Horatio. These were all part of the Maitland Area Transportation Study recommendations that a council in August of 2004 approved. And most of which were done and paid for by FDOT, right, Cliff? And that of course then, for those of you that were here, we also had an opportunity to review a downtown Maitland master plan, which had effectively some of the same elements. Now, the predicate here, when this was done in 2004, to these presumptions were that we were going to be building a city hall in the middle of Horatio. You remember that, Joanne? And with a 10-foot drive lane around one side of the city hall and a 10-foot drive lane around the other side of City Hall. Now, something I had included in this resolution was a closing of Horatio, between Independence Lane, or a future Independence Lane, and Maitland Avenue, which was effectively what was already going to be happening. And suggested as part of this resolution also a widening of, it's subject to the approval of the mayor of Sevilla Avenue, between Maitland Avenue and 1792, to be able to more easily and efficiently and safely accommodate traffic from that side, to be able to get across safely at a stoplight at basically where Cappy's and the 7-Eleven are. Again, something that we probably should have done many years ago. Also had proposed some calming measures as the study had called for on Maitland Avenue. We, of course, as a part of the Downtown Maitland Master Plan, approved essentially some of the very same Maitland Avenue calming features that are involved. Of course, now we own Maitland Avenue, and we can choose to do with it what this council chooses to do with it. On an ongoing basis, that's up to us. And what I was wanting to propose, and I can go on obviously much longer, I've thought about and kicked this around with people in the room here for years. There are no surprises here. Was to break the inertia to do something that no mayor or council has done in the last 16 plus years, that they agreed to do. And to try to break the inertia of having the discussion to take us from when was Maitland Avenue wide? 1984? Joanne? Remember, close to mid-80s?
Well, it was 2 lanes when I first moved here, so
Yeah, it's a long time. So we've gotten,
1948.
well, yeah. Joanne knows, she was in the parade. So, the concept here is routing, and we've all talked about it at great length. Maitland, Maitland Winter Park, and we are sort of pass-through cities here. East Orange County, South Seminole County doesn't have any effectively better way to get to the interstate than Maple Boulevard. And for those Winter Park folks, it becomes Aloma Fairbanks. It doesn't appear as though we've got any magic solution to that. So traffic is something that we're going to have. Can we make it better and still allow Maitland Avenue to become the complete street that I know Mr. Thomas appreciated earlier when we did the Maitland or the Downtown Maitland Master Plan? That taking it back to a local complete street. But the inertia has to be broken somewhere. And have the discussion. So I'm spare shaving you some time because I can go on about this way too long. Maria's looking at me like, yeah, you're right. So these are some of the thoughts. Cliff, do you have anything that you'd like to share from your recollection of the original 2004 study? This is Cliff Tate, serving on our Transportation Advisory Board. With
Good evening, Mayor, board members. I'm Cliff Tate, 159 Way Trail.
Yell at me, Cliff.
So I'm just available to answer any questions that you may have. Back then, I was a project manager for King Horn. We did the study for DOT. It was funded by DOT for the city, a joint study. I believe that, Mayor, you were on the PAD at the time, or?
I was on P&Z at the time.
Okay. Well, you were a PNC rep on the PAD, Mayor.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I'd just be glad to answer any questions that you might have.
Yeah, we had, as I recall, Cliff, and correct me if I'm wrong, we had certain assumptions, predicates to the study. We were expecting the 300, we were expecting Ravinia being 300 units across the street. We still had aspirations of an Usler development that was 350 odd condos, 100,000 of retail, 100,000 of office. So there was the expectation of a great deal of density. That was at the time.
And the overall objective was to try to shift traffic, that you know, the Z movement that goes from Maitland Boulevard down Maitland Avenue, and the ratio shifted over 1792. It's a shorter route to go Maitland Avenue, and so you really have to calm the traffic to penalize people making that movement. Even though it can be faster to stay on 1792, but yeah, that was the goal, to try to shift traffic.
Safer. So and of course I've gotten very spoiled by the last, 10 years plus, 15 years almost, the down ramp, coming as I cross the interstate. Unless I'm coming down here someplace to City Hall to annoy Maria or somebody, or Sharon, I'm going down the down ramp. And I'm going back that way and doing the loop around to get on Maitland Boulevard. So it's become part of my life. And that Joanne would remember, and other folks did, the county to a 4-lane Maitland Avenue back in those days, Joanne, there was blood on the floor in here.
Yes, I spilled some of mine.
Yes, also yours. So again, trying to do, please understand, my intent here is to try to better the traffic movements that we have while continuing to be able to have that complete local street of Maitland Avenue that Joanne grew up with, that many of us would like to see back and have that be able to work while having that local quality and still have the efficiency of moving traffic as well as we can. So, any questions or comments?
I wish that down ramp had a acceleration lane with a constant green arrow to get out. And I think you could help your cause.
Yeah, we tried that basically because there's a big drop in traffic on 1792 between Maitland Boulevard and Horatio. Because you got so many people that are, coming down, 1792 and heading west on Maitland Boulevard, and you have a reverse unit. But we were trying to do the same thing northbound too, where we could have one lane going to the loop ramp, and then make it a little bit more efficient for people that are coming off Maitland. Seminole County, Jerry McCollum was the county engineer. He didn't like it. Maybe he's long retired. There's still DOT still needs to look at that interchange. There's some improvements that can be done.
We've talked about this before, which is incentivizing versus penalizing.
Yeah.
And how do you change behavior? And you penalize the Maitland Avenue route in order to encourage people to go 1792, or do you incentivize the 1792 route in order to get people off Maitland Avenue?
Yeah.
And I would prefer to see us try to make the route better on 1792 and make that, and try to penalize the Maitland Avenue, because I think you get a lot of unintended consequences of true local traffic by doing some of these lanes. And I think that there's so much movement, and I've talked to people who live around the Lake Sealy area, and I've talked to people who live on the east side who go to the west side for various things.
Every day.
It's not just pass-through traffic that uses these routes. It's people who are traveling within the city, and I know we've talked over the years lots about this, because for years you've had these plans, and I think you and I have disagreed on some of these, but it's
I
hard.
can't take credit for these are Dave Tomek.
Understood. I mean, and I think that there's
Please
issues.
don't let me take credit for anything.
There's issues with, I mean, I think Packwood is such a difficult intersection to begin with. And the thought of pushing any more traffic to Packwood is concerning to me, just because, and I think that that's just what will happen, I think, on some of these plans. The movement will go to Packwood, and to me that, we've all talked about it. To me, I play, anytime I make a left, it's a game of chicken.
Oh, yeah.
With the traffic.
Westbound traffic coming at you.
From Packwood. No one, I mean, and no one uses a turn signal anymore at all nowadays. And it's literally like you're guessing. Is he gonna turn? Is she gonna turn? It's a tough movement. So I also think, Dale, when I sort of look at the objectives, I think I hear you with wanting to bring that more community feel. And some of that, what I don't know is, do you do the transportation side of that first, or do you do the land kind of planning side of it first?
And then we don't know what, that's the hard part, Mike.
Well, because I think you plan based on the fact that we are wanting to have an Independence Lane, and we've got, in my opinion, a good thing going with Independence Lane in the park, and I think I'm starting to see, and this is even in this time where it's tough to see people getting out, people are really enjoying this avenue, lane, whatever you want to call it, with the park that's been created here.
Yeah.
And I think that coming out of this dark winter, people are going to enjoy that even more. And I really think that we've got an opportunity to further that. And I think we've talked about this for years, the connection down to Lake Lily and all of that. So those are things that I would want to focus on more.
Prioritize?
I probably would want to prioritize.
Right, we do disagree with that. I understand your point, though.
The ideas of looking at where do we want to see the activity centers in the city? Where do we want to see different land use sides of this? And looking at where parks may go and where libraries may go, and linear parks that we've talked about, connecting up to the Sunrail, and all of those things that are where traffic and roads and all that are part of it. I think I would prioritize that vision of what we want that downtown to be, and then look at the roads as a part of that. Not saying let's look at the roads and have the development and the priorities of the city infrastructure come second. So that's where you gave me that look of disapproval, but that's okay.
No, it's not disapproval. I'm just trying to figure out how does chicken or the egg come first here?
So
does our planning come along with what our traffic pattern might be? Or do we go through an LDC and an edge district and some of what they're talking about right now? I think they go change it.
I think that once
Does that make sense?
It does, but I think that the planning goes first, and then the priority of getting Independence Lane, the priority of
I agree.
encouraging the walkability of the downtown, and how do we get people to park a car and not move it,
Yeah.
and walk
Walk it once.
from up and down a future Independence Lane and stop at a variety of businesses and get some new shoes and walk in those shoes down to Lake Lily. I mean, those are the things that I think we should prioritize. And I think that tackling, and I know you're not afraid to tackle the hard issue, and I appreciate that kind of willingness to bring up the tough issues. I just don't know that doing that potentially hampers and moves the conversation in an area that's more controversial than it needs to be, given the fact that what we really want to focus on is encouraging the walkability and this destination of downtown.
How do we do that?
Well, I think that we come up with a vision of downtown that I think is already, the groundwork has been laid with a walkable street that has no sidewalks and is an attractive place to be. You anchor it with a great park and businesses that face into that park, and you say, look at what we can do. And look at the sidewalks that can be filled with people, and say, come do business in Maitland, because we're gonna have an energy that's around and walkable downtown that is distinct from 1792. So let's run a commercial.
Yeah, and yeah, don't leave that creatively up to me, but, you know, you like the idea, is there any value in the idea of closing Horatio between that Independence Lane and Maitland Avenue?
I think, my opinion, as a not traffic person, but as a user of the streets, is that no. And that I think that too many people use it as an opportunity to get within Maitland and not necessarily to pass through. It's a place where people use to go to the schools, to the post office, to down to this. That I think that if you close that off, it restricts that movement to a way that I think is a negative for the movement within Maitland. I hear you that it would also have the benefit of discouraging the passer-throughs of Maitland, but too many residents of Maitland, it's just a weird thing. It's saying, okay,
We got used to it.
well, no, it's saying to all the people in Maitland, we're gonna penalize you because we really got to stop all these people that are coming from outside the city. And you're going to like us for that, because overall it'll be better, but we're going to make it more difficult for you to do your normal day-to-day. And I'd love to say that what I'd rather do is put a speed limit. I'd like to make Horatio a more pedestrian friendly. You know, those are the things that are discourage the people before they get into Maitland to use our city as a cut through. But that's really, I mean, we all know that's a
County would
difficult
throw
step.
a ratio at us tomorrow, right, Sharon?
Yes.
Yeah, but I think that I don't think that closing the ratio works, because like I said, I think there's too many
That section
people.
anyway.
Yeah, there's too many people that use it that are residents of Maitland that don't deserve, that they need or want the ability to go east and west. And that you're saying, well, there's alternatives, but those alternatives are not great. I mean, I've been on Sebelia. If we want to try to push traffic to Sebelia and
Ventures.
So Sebelia, well, Ventures is, if anybody, there's so many illegal turns that happen at Ventures,
Yeah.
it's really dangerous when somebody's doing that. But
How does the ratio fix that?
the Packwood, I don't think I think it makes it worse. I mean, so I think pushing people to Sebelia, there's constraints with the fact that that railroad track is too close to the end. There's nowhere to go. So you're going to push, even if you could widen it, you're going to push more people there. It doesn't fix the fact that there's not enough distance between 1792 and the railroad track.
You're gonna have stacking issues.
You're going to have, I mean, we have problems here between a light and the railroad tracks, and there's about 200 yards between those railroad tracks and the lighted Horatio and 1792. So there's that physical constraint of the location of the railroad tracks. Packwood, again, you're talking about pushing traffic to Packwood, and with the way that traffic backs up there now, and we've all tried to, if you've ever tried to take a left out of Packwood at 5:30 in rush hour, it's impossible. So I think that pushing traffic to Packwood to then have people make a left and then make a right on Horatio versus, or going down and taking the swoop and then gunning it out of that, because people are constantly, the flow of traffic doesn't let up on going eastbound on Horatio there. So I you know, in a perfect world, we'd all, you know, be able to walk and not have to dodge cars, but that's just not it's currently not the reality.
So the big thing going on north, on the theoretical Independence Lane going north, is gonna have to dodge cars.
No, I think we can solve some of the crossings. We talked about this in previous meetings.
Right.
I think having some sort of calming devices, whether it's tables, and I know Sharon, we've talked about this, but tables or the more flashing lights, and I think there was somebody mentioned there was now the thing where it actually lights up in the street, like a light that flashes in the street that has a pedestrian crossing. You have it where people can't actually, you mark it so there's no stopping in that pedestrian crossing, and you have that both here and at Packwood. And so you have a walkability that goes across Horatio and across Packwood that is pedestrian friendly, and then it's an enforcement issue just like everything else. It's an enforcement of people not stopping on those crosswalks. And
Yeah, I guess I was envisioning, and I hear what you're saying, I was envisioning the west side of an Independence Lane, north and south, being unvehically conflicted. So the west, this side of the street, of something north and south, you know, that moms can walk their strollers or, you know, safely without having vehicle conflicts. And I understand we have an imperfect setup here. And we have gotten used to, however, miserably, and we all hear the same complaints. And I don't see it ever getting great.
What do they say, even if we built a new lane right now, it would still be a grade D road, right?
Yeah, well, we had our opportunity in 1972, we blew it, and that's the way that is. So, it's Maitland Boulevard, of course, as you all heard me say before, was supposed to go through Red 9436. Those days are gone. So, here we are. So do we just throw up our hands and do, and I can hear you, are those solutions or are they Band-Aids? I don't know. Is that what we settled for? Because we don't want to think about asking folks to do something different.
I'll jump in and say we're not asking them, we're just going to do it and tell them to adapt. I mean, we haven't had any public hearings on this, there's been no public input, it hasn't been the PAB, it hasn't been anywhere.
It was at a council 16 years ago.
16 years ago. So,
What's changed, Mike?
Well, we don't know because we're sitting here trying to figure out how traffic will flow. And so, based on us trying to figure out how traffic will flow, with our liberal arts degrees and law degrees, and then go out and design a whole new road network based on that with absolutely no public input, and with, you know, a headline on this thing that kind of obfuscates, or whatever that word is, what we're doing. Yeah.
Does that sound low as though somebody's being
I mean, we need, if we want to do this, we need to bring the public in and go through a process, go through a traffic analysis to see where things will go. You know, go through the CIP and see where the money's going to come from. Allocate the $300,000 or whatever it will cost for this study, instead of just like pulling it out of thin air. And the only motivation for this, and I appreciate it, Dale, is you're leaving office, but that's not a reason for us to bypass everything and go right to design. It's just not a reason to do it.
Mike, would you expect to have?
I mean, I'm not worried about re-election, but you know, if you go and approve this road design and start this process, you know, people, their hair is going to be so on fire, they're not even going to look at the plan. They're going to look at how you did it. And this place, we better have social distancing because it is not going to be pretty. And that's why it hasn't been done for 16 years or however many years. So, you know, our whole city, our little town, and based on people participating and based on transparency and based on bringing folks into the process, you kind of thrown that completely under the bus because you think this is what we need to do, and so we'll just forget all that. And that's just, you know, it's kind of arrogant, to be honest. And you're just kind of walking out the door and rolling a grenade in, and we're supposed to jump on it. I think these ideas I think we need to look at these things. I think we need to look at, I remember in Maitland Avenue was 2 lanes. I think we need to look at that. I don't think we need to automatically etch in parking, but, you know, we can look at these things. I think we need to do it right. You know, we need to find out what we're doing. We need to find out what the traffic flows are. We need to allocate the money for the study. We need to prioritize it. We need to figure out where the money would come from. So do we not underground utilities? Do we not do parks? That's exactly the questions we're asking. We're not the federal government. We can't just print money. So the money is going to have to come from somewhere. So where's it going to come from? So let's put our CIP list up there and say, okay, we're going to leapfrog, you know, Maitland Avenue, and then with everything else. And that's the reality of the situation. I mean, it's money.
I would suggest in this resolution implementation. Do you think a design process might actually include some public input?
You're designing the road before we even hold public hearings on whether people want the road. I mean, your jump start, you don't go to design until you've decided to build. That's when you go to design, after you've made the decision to build. And we haven't made a decision to build. We're bypassing the process. We're bypassing the public. We're bypassing our boards. You know, we're bypassing everything. And so my question is, why? Why right now is this the most pressing thing, you know, on the agenda? Why is it more pressing than all these, you know, the Independence Lane, the library, everything else that will just, you know, get shoved down the priority list and do it without one iota of input from the public? Resolution, Maitland Area Transportation Study, downtown Maitland. What does that tell people? That was deliberately written that way so people would know what we were doing.
Right.
Except that, Mike, you received emails of what?
The emails, this finally got out on Facebook. That's why people are responding. And they're like, they learned about this 1 or 2 days ago.
Right.
I mean, we're talking about people living across lakes, and gosh, we got to notify them, you know, if they're over 500 feet and stuff, and we agonize it. Well, we're like taking the biggest scab in Maitland and potentially making it much worse and not telling a soul about it. I mean, that's just not the way you do things, and I think ultimately that sabotages your goal, because people are going to be so furious about how we did this, they're not going to even care what we're doing. So, like I said, I'm not up for re-election. You know, if I was, and I really wanted to be re-elected, but people are going to be mad about this. And they really have a right to be. And I agree with some of the ideas, particularly, you know, down the road, I you know, turning Maitland Avenue, you know, maybe 3-laning and having pedestrian and bike lanes and all those good things. But this isn't the way to do it.
How would you do it, Mike?
I would go through a public process, I would inform the public of what we're doing, I'd bring them in the room, and I'd engage them. When we built the sidewalk on Tuscarora, gosh, we went down there and we talked to the residents, Sharon talked to them, we had, what's that word called, where you put the joints up? Charrettes. We just, and when we did Sandsburg, gosh, we did like 3 tours and TAB members out there and just everything. And then we're going to do something of this magnitude with 0 notification? That just defies who we are as a city.
Wow.
And I think ultimately it sabotages what you want to do.
Well, that was certainly not my intent, Mike. I appreciate you commenting. There are elements of what have been proposed that have merit.
I agree. I agree with you, Dale. I agree that, listening to Mike on Horatio, when I saw that first idea, I thought, well, that looks interesting. But, it has to be looked at, and people have to be involved in the process. You can't just spring it on them and say, by the way, here we have this study we spent $300,000 on to do these road improvements or road changes. And I think that sabotages everything you want. I think if you brought people in, if you engaged them, if you showed them what you want to do, if you showed them traffic flows from these new ways we have of analyzing traffic flows, Bluetooth or whatever big government's spying on you. You can come up with a reason saying, we want to do this and here's why.
Right.
And then win them over. So
we have a kumbaya moment at that point, win them over.
Well, we
And
tried.
then we have a vote up at a council level at some point. Or do we do that on Facebook? Decide to.
I don't know how we do it. We don't do it at 9 o'clock at night with no public notice. We don't do it then. With a pandemic going on. And people are afraid to come to the meeting. So, I'll defer to my other colleagues after that rant.
All right, anybody else have any thoughts? Lindsay, any thoughts jump out at you?
I agree with Mike. I think it's offensive to the city of Maitland residents that this was done this way. I think there is a legitimate discussion. I think everyone in this room, everyone who lives in Maitland knows that we have traffic problems. But I don't think anybody wants to hang their hat on trying to fix them based on a study done in 2004. It seems to make absolutely no sense that we would make any decisions based on that. Even if there was a resolution of council from 2004, things have changed. More discussion needs to be had. There needs to be a plan. There needs to be public input. So I would like to put an end to this discussion for this evening because I don't think anybody else wants to talk about this any further. So I would like to make a motion to reject the resolution and so we can move on with our evening.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion second. Before we go any further, anybody from the public like to address this particular agenda item? I'm sure Gus has some thoughts.
Good evening, Gus Bogus, 621 Dominant Drive. I've been in Maitland as a resident since '95. I know this community pretty well. Closing off Horatio and turning Maitland Avenue into a 2-lane road with side parking is a potentially transformative idea. It's been kicked around for 16, 20 years. It's a great idea. I am very much open to the idea. I think, there was a traffic study done, that was 16 years ago. That traffic study was implemented by a good friend of mine, Rick Baldacchi, and he had to sell me. He had to sell me. I said, Rick, what are you doing? What are you doing? Well, we're pushing everybody to 1792. When you come down Maitland Boulevard, you go down that off-ramp, and then you do the double turn lane onto Horatio. I'm like, what? It's like, yeah, try it. I tried it. It's fabulous. These engineers know what they're doing. Well, I'm an engineer too. Engineers know what they're doing. So we have a potentially great idea, and it's most likely technically sound, but we're missing the human element. We haven't sold this to the citizens of Maitland. I think it probably would work, but as Mike said, we need to do a traffic study first. Update the traffic study. You have a couple thousand more apartments in the core area. You have I-4 and all the improvements. I think the traffic study will show good for this idea. Once we get that traffic study done or updated, we then need to go to our citizens and say, hey, we've got this idea that's going to give us an even better downtown than we created in the last 15 years. I love the idea. My wife loves the idea. But I can guarantee you, if you vote to just go straight to design tonight, you'll kill this project. Because Maitland residents do not like having things shoved down their throat. They need to be sold. They need to buy into this. We need to explain it. Maitland doesn't do a great job of selling these great ideas to its residents, and we need to do that. I'll leave it at that. I think you should pursue a study and move forward, but there's a process. And, please, stick to the process. I think it's a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Gus. Joanne.
Joanne Snodgrass, Benty, 1771 Chinook Trail. And kudos and praise are now over. I read and reread this resolution. I underlined it, I made notes, because I wanted to make sure I did not misspeak. Some of the items or comments I'm going to bring up has been clarified. Unfortunately, because I have a one-track mind on this, I'm going to go ahead and comment on my initial response, because my problem with this is the process. This is unbelievable. So here's what I'm going to address, even though, and Mayor, I do see the efficacy of this in some level, but I do not see it happening this way now. This is offensive to me personally. I remember a similar proposal when Dave Tomac was here, and I was trying to come up with a date, and I thought late 90s, early 2000. I could be off there, even though I was involved with it. And it failed. I remember the similar proposal around 2013, 2014. It failed. And I hear you speak of inertia. The inertia is because it's not a good idea, and certainly not presented this way this time. And I think the thing that actually raised my eyebrows was when I read the third whereas that it's based on a study, August 23rd, 2004. That is alarming. And if I misinterpreted what I've read, I certainly don't mean to, or cast aspersions, or be so negative about this. And if I am wrong, I'd like to know when a more relevant study was done, based on 2021. And if so, alert me to the dates, if there were any, of the new public input meetings. And the current study that makes this relevant and feasible almost 18 years after the official research was done. You have a 4-year-old kid that wants a Lego set, but it just doesn't work out for you to do it at that time. But it comes up again and it still doesn't work out. But 17, 18 years down the road, it does. So now you give your 21-year-old kid a Lego set. Don't give us a Lego set. We need new studies. We need research, and this input is imperative for success. I'm 75 years old. The impact on my life is not as long-lasting as it will be for generations to come. And I would like for those generations to know that whatever was decided with the process that has been traditional in Maitland, to vet, to study, to have the public come here. This is about transparency in my mind. And my concern is deep, and I believe with just cause. I see it's being thrown now against the wall to see if it sticks. And I will repeat, without new timely attention, meetings, and input. I would be very alarmed sitting up there making this important decision based on the study that is over 17 years old. That's one of the major flaws in this. I do believe it has value. I don't believe this is the way to go about it. But right now, if all of this is true, right now, I'm just queasy thinking I may be right about this, that this could happen based on something that is not relevant to this today.
Thank you, Joanne. Madam Mayor.
I'm Carolyn Schaefer, and again, I live at 341 West Virginia Avenue. And I just can't believe, Mr. Mayor, you added again, you didn't get the Civic Center, what you wanted, it's not even out of this. I couldn't print fast enough, I just couldn't do it. But so many people on this network, when we have Lakes to be writing in and say, what is Maitland doing? They're actually turning us away from coming to Maitland with this. And one person said, actually, hope somebody goes and shoots it down. And next year's sales, I'm shooting it down. Listen, I don't even think you should spend $300,000. Wait till COVID is over and you can get people in here. And you need to notify them that you're having these meetings. You're spending our money to do these things. It's not right. And a lot of the older people, they don't have computers and they don't have, so they didn't get this. I didn't find out about this till this morning. I got my shot today, and I'm here tonight to tell you it's wrong. And that gentleman down there beside Sharon, boy, do I like what you said of this attorney here. Good for you. Speak your mind. Always speak your mind whether you're going to be reelected or not. You will be admired by citizens and people. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Mayor McDowell, Vice Mayor Wild, ladies and gentlemen of the council. I'm Frank Stansberry. I live at 80 Oakley Drive. I've been a resident here for 39 years. I have to say that in those 39 years, I've had a lot of changes in my life here in Maitland. I got to say that the bar is pretty high for bad ideas lately. The worst ideas, the leaders in the clubhouse right now, the traffic patterns in and out of Publix, and the approval of thousands of apartments right up against 1792, which dump thousands of cars into 1792 every day. But in the race for the worst idea, this one is a contender. This is a horrible idea. It's predicated on a study that's almost 20 years old. It's predicated on a development that never got developed. It's sprung on us. My wife found out about this meeting at 5:30 tonight. I'm doing this instead of dinner. It's important to me because I live here. I live east of 1792. I live south of Horatio. And I predicate my day on making a right turn out of Oakley because you can't make a left turn out of Oakley most of the time. When I do venture to the west, I try to get into Publix and combine that with a trip to the post office or to the bank, because you can't get from Publix back to Oakley Drive. You got all these things going down. Then you have a program that's going to be financed and paid for by the people. Government fund is all comes from us. We are the government. And it's money poorly timed and money poorly spent. We could do much better things for the city of Maitland and the citizens of Maitland if we scuttled this plan entirely and found something better to do. We've got all the apartments now we didn't have. We don't have a city hall sitting in the middle of a ratio. We have a whole different set of circumstances. We need to have a whole different plan. You people can stop this or you can push it forward. The city of Maitland will be waiting to see it.
Thank you, sir. Say, Paul.
Good evening, Paul Brennan, 1180 Copeland Trail. I'm here to mix of things here tonight. I came here to get educated. I'm trying to stay open-minded. The positive, what I've heard from folks, is that people love what you're doing with the downtown. People are excited about it. So they're not against the concept of changing things. But I think that the sense I got was people feel that maybe it's premature to go ahead with the, what's the word that we used on this?
Design.
Design, right. Maybe design is premature, maybe a study is appropriate. That's what I think I'm hearing. So I'm trying to look at the positive. I do think people are excited about what you've done so far. I'm a resident, long-term resident. I personally think it's fabulous. I don't know that I have the creativity to come up with what it is today. I don't know if this traffic flow works or not. My concern, guys, and I'm not a traffic engineer, I think if traffic is like water, it finds its path of least resistance, and we have maybe too much water today for the roads. I don't know how this would impact it, so I can't really say I'm for or against the design there, but I guess what I'm hearing is, I don't think people are against change. I don't think I've heard that. I just think it's the way that change is being proposed. That's all I have to say. Thank you for listening.
Great, thank you, Paul. Anybody else like to address this particular agenda item? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing, bring it back to council, and this is good public input. And please don't misunderstand. Even proposing something like this was with the assumption there's got to be a great deal of public input. Okay. We have, we've still got a ton of public input to do on a community facility / library or a location, that kind of thing for that. And that's been put off the last 4 months or so. So there's inertia that comes with such things. And frankly, my intent with this is just to break the inertia of the discussion. We haven't had this discussion in 60.5 years. And it was thought to be a fruitful enough discussion for a council 60.5 years ago. Decided to adopt this as our transportation model for downtown Maitland. And yes, there are more apartments here now than was planned into the process, but there was a ton of apartments and multifamily planned into the process there. So not as much as there are now. I understand. So no, there's hours and hours of public input that would come with any part of this. I just wanted to have the discussion. We just haven't had it. Just like one of the discussions with, as Mayor Savili pointed out, I wanted to have a discussion on the Civic Center. And that was turned out to be a positive discussion. Did it go my way? No. Vance and I will live to vote another day, or some other day. But we have to have the discussion and explore choices that we may have. And we at least do have a very extensive, I don't know how expensive that study was back then, Cliff, but, with DOT, Orange County, Seminole County, City of Maitland, we had everybody that could be in the game. So, I wanted to, again, my desire was not to do anything like backdoor anybody where they're being surprised. Was just to have a discussion. There were a bunch of smart people, Rick Galacki and Cliff and the other folks that were involved in this. would have been driver's licenses too. So, something to discuss, and, yeah, Mike, I see your point. I did want to, you're probably right, I've got a couple of meetings left, 2 meetings left after tonight. You know, I wanted to have this discussion.
I think you certainly did get a discussion. I think we should, you know, sit back and in our upcoming budget cycle, when we're planning the budget, you know, we can look at what the budget has, and we can look at what we're doing. We can, you know, see where we want to put this. I think, like Gus and some others said, it could be a good idea. We just need to do the groundwork, and we can look at, you know, my way of thinking, we can decide if we want to look at that in the next budget cycle, and kind of go from there.
So, I would say, I'll say a little something now. And I like to try to find a positive in any kind of negative. I usually can. The one good thing about this is, and Dale brought up the discussion. We haven't discussed it. I mean, there's probably a whole bunch of people watching right now on here, and they've never had that discussion. And maybe people will start talking around the water cooler, and we'll get some ideas and some action going. I mean, look, I grew up and Edgewater was a 4-lane road. Now it went on a diet, and it has people, bicycles, stores, everything. Plant Street and Winter Garden. I mean, that was just, you know, I mean, nothing was happening down there. People were just speeding through there to get through Winter Garden as fast as they could. Now it's 20, 25 miles an hour. The stores do great. They have a bike trail, everything happens. So, I mean,
Winter Park.
Yeah, Winter Park. I mean, there's a lot of good things that can come from it. And I think, you know, it gets back to it. If we educate people on what we want to do, then yeah. So, you know, during this COVID time, it might not be the best. Do I think this needs to happen? I love the idea. I love putting it on road diet. Even if we want to just, in the next year or two, even slow down Maitland here, because I know it's 30 now, right? 35? 35, so everybody here knows 35 equals really what? 40. So I wouldn't have my kid crossing this road, but
Yeah, make a note.
You ain't gonna catch me. But, no, I think there's a need for it. I think there's a good future for it. But back to it, I think it's just a timing issue right now. And I think it's a discussion for another time, but definitely I would not want to see this die. I want to keep this conversation going.
No, I think all of you, I know all of you well. You know my heart. This is not about something except trying to move the ball forward. That whether it's impressing Leona, whether it's or Christopher, or whoever it might be, you know, that we do know, and I think we can agree, that the current traffic scenario is, we don't want to believe that that's sustainable. Is that just misery that we've become comfortable with? And we just, you know, put up with it? It's not going to get better. So that was my intent here tonight. So you have a motion, you have a second. And so Ms. Bray, if you want to call the roll.
Councilmember Guthrie?
Is to deny?
Yes.
Okay. Aye.
Councilmember Hall Harrison?
Aye.
Councilmember Thomas?
Aye.
Councilmember Wild?
Aye.
Mayor McDonald?
Okay. Okay, let's move on to decision item number 5, which is our city clerk evaluation and compensation discussion. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Thanks for coming. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Joanne. Be careful.
Yes, I am. Oh, I forgot, sorry. Those of you have had the opportunity to complete the clerk's evaluation form, and I'm sure that you've gotten those back in. Anybody from the, actually, council, do you have any questions?
I got mine done and just had my discussion with Sharon this afternoon, and so.
All right. Anybody from the public like to address? Boy, the pictures got pretty slim, didn't they? Stacy, don't take that personally.
Got anything?
If there's no further discussion, then motion be in order.
We don't fire Maria?
Are we looking for, with this, does it include a pay increase, or what are we voting on? That's kind of the.
So what was
move.
budgeted was 2% for our employees.
Okay.
I'm good with that.
Yeah.
That's the standard employee rate, the average employee rate?
It's merit-based, but yeah, that's what's, we budget, and then we stay within that parameter. Some people get less.
So, Sharon, can I bring up our discussion of what we talked about for compensation for yourself, or?
Oh, I'd take hers first.
Right,
They're
okay.
two
Then
separate.
just do it separate?
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
Okay. Then I'd like to make a motion for a 2% increase for the city clerk after evaluation.
We have a motion. Sharon's just begging for a second.
Second.
Hates to beg, man. So we have a motion and a second. Any further questions or comments? Well, I enjoy my healthy snacks.
Oh, and a big thank you to Maria for everything she's always done. I can't even tell you how valuable. I want to just say, I always thought of it as the rock and the
Let's
compass.
go first, and then we'll.
Oh, then I'll
Maria
kiss,
back.
then I'll kiss up on her.
Okay.
Okay.
It's 9:30.
Oh, it's bedtime.
It is, I'm old.
Councilmember Paul
String this out,
Harrison.
Mike, if you like.
Aye.
Miss Maria, if you would call the
Councilmember
roll.
Thomas.
Aye.
Councilmember Wild.
Aye.
Councilmember Guthrie.
Aye.
Mayor McDonald.
I'm sorry, aye. Okay, now, do we want to sugar up to Maria?
Yes, and I always think of Maria as the rock and the compass, because the rock is always somebody who's solid and you can rely on, and the compass is always something that'll just guide you in the right direction. So she's the rock and the compass.
Should I just be okay to say ditto? I understand. Okay, more to do. Ms. Sharon. Oh, it's just me to introduce her.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. I know that we've got, we're evaluating our city manager. And have any of us finished up? Nancy, you did both the evaluations? Sharon and Maria?
I did Sharon and Maria, yeah.
Good. All right. So, any discussions, questions, comments before we go to the public? See if anybody wants to address this.
Stacy.
Stacy, this is a you. Thank you. We'll close the public hearing, bring it back to council, and a motion be in order.
Make a motion that based on the city manager's evaluation, move to approve a 2% increase effective January 1st, 2020.
Well, actually, I better speak up. I don't want an increase in my pay. I'm fine. You guys set me in the right course at my last evaluation in the middle of COVID and potential budget blow up, I don't feel it's a good time for me, so.
Sure, we gotta work on that humility a
I
little
know,
bit.
no, I don't,
So we
I
just-
prefer not, so you don't have to take just 0% increase, and I'm fine with that.
You want to take that motion?
Sure. I'll make a motion to approve it. I mean, are we really gonna do it? I mean,
I'm totally fine.
I've
Talk to me, she
talked
doesn't.
to Sharon at length.
I tried to talk to her, we'll make it, no, I'm not gonna make that.
I tried to offer her 500 grand a year, she just laughed at me, so. All right, so we have a motion, you got a second?
No, no one's there.
No,
No, we have a motion, but no
I
second.
don't think there's a motion.
I withdrew it.
Oh, come on, don't make me do this.
Well, guess what, you can take no motion, and that's the same thing. So, because I will get a
That's
big
no
raise.
increase.
I respect Sharon's wishes and be happy to revisit this.
We're never gonna win this argument, you guys. Looking for a motion.
I make a motion at this time that, we do a 0 increase for the city manager's evaluation, but with thought of next year to, instead of a 2%, to look at a 3% increase.
Well, I don't want to lock in what the raise would be.
Oh, yeah, because then.
I just say we'll postpone,
I take that back.
we'll postpone Sharon's raise, how about
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, I don't think, nothing means the same, so yeah, we'll just leave it.
So we have a motion and a second. Any other, you might want to address this?
We had a motion.
I don't think anything happened, Dale.
I think we went
I
by
take it back.
Sharon's advice and just let it.
No,
Yeah,
this is good news.
Let it die. Just let it die.
Now, if I could-
Well, I hate just letting something die. But I understand. All right,
I think that played out the right.
all right. Mr. City Attorney, anything you want to share with us?
As always, keep your eye on the legislature. Things are afoot, but I'm not going to get into it until it gets more serious. But if you're paying attention, you know what I'm talking about.
Might need another letter from Dan.
Like sovereign immunity going to 500,000 and a million?
Yeah, maybe like that.
Go into it. Anybody else have any things that they want to?
Yeah, real quick, I talked to Representative Marcel's staff today about House Bill 219 and also another House Bill coming through, 314, 3 something, but this one House Bill will make it so vacation rentals can be short-term throughout to the cities, yeah. And it's already passed the House and it's gonna run through the Senate, and the only stopping it, I think, is with the governor. Then the other bill is, Cliff, tell me if I'm wrong, is that you can do in-home businesses, as long as you have 2 employees, your house could be a business. So my neighbor, with what the state's doing now, I could have a rehab center on the right of me. I could have a dog sitting place across the street from me, and then I could have a VRBO on the other side of me. So that's what we got coming down the pipes.
What's selling your house?
Yeah, right?
Already, yeah. But you're exactly right.
Yeah.
And all this being preempted.
I think there's a discussion with the League of Cities on that coming tomorrow.
Yeah.
Tomorrow or Wednesday.
In hearings and committees. I think Mike would agree with me, when we aspire to grow up to be that smart as those guys are.
They know way better than you do what's good for your city.
That's right.
And boy, when Washington does that to them, boy, they squeal.
Yeah, different story there. Okay, nothing else we want to talk about tonight? Mike, sounds
They're closing the doors at the retirement home.
Yeah.